Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the War Report. I have, of course, with me always, GSP, our excellent
Hello.
co-host, the guy who's been with me for the past 8 years doing this, and you, the people who come back year after year, and you just heard him right there. We have our favorite guest, arguably our only guest. There's been a couple others throughout the years, but our most consistent guest. We have Geo back, which means there's going to be some deep dives tonight, and we're going to get lost in the weeds, which is the reason.
Assalamu alaikum.
He's already showing why we bring him on. It's
Alaikum salam. Yeah. I was actually reading a bit into Brother Fard and the Nation of Islam because of that one Thomas. That one, him and Jay Bird talking about the zebra murders. I believe he's still alive. He's in the Hollow Earth. He definitely was not. He definitely was not murdered by Brother Elijah.
I mean, I'm sold.
I'm sure some temple, like there's some like Nation of Islam organization that still receives some of his pension checks. Who knows? But, they got it down pat. Anyways.
No, that was probably one of the best intros to date. We're almost 400 episodes into this program. It's insane to believe. But I think that might be in the top 10 of all intros we've ever done, including the one we did in Serbian. that was that was good. I think we did that for episode 300. I had to check back, but that was.
Oh, did you know it's the anniversary of Harambe?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, it has been that long, hasn't it? 20.
How was it? Yeah. What was it? 2012?
No, that was 2016. Which was
2016,
which is why it was perfect because just everything happened in 2016.
Yeah, the end of the world, the Mayan calendar happened in 2016.
So true. They were only off by 4 years. But I suppose I should tell the audience what our show is going to actually consist of this time around, and that is we have Geo, which I already alluded to. We're going to get lost in the weeds. We have a very nice, kind of older article from 1993, one that we've been teasing for a while that we're finally going to read on air. But first, we just want to do some general news items, get Geo's take on, I don't know, just the past month, I guess, with the ceasefire or lack thereof, Trump's trip to China, just a general overview of the Ukraine situation. We're not going to be doing up-to-date maps right now, not this episode, but just a reflection on the current state of Ukraine, among other news events that may come up, maybe Thomas Massey, because that has been a controversy as of late. That's been a fun one to deal with. But I suppose, because, Gio, you had mentioned it, you wanted to say a few words on the China visit.
Oh yeah. Well, what was interesting is that, whoa, technical difficulties. What was interesting is that, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're clear.
That kind of sounds like the NWO intro, like then the screen go black. My mind's been so polluted by professional wrestling. No, but I guess it kind of ties into the China thing, right? But when they had like NWO Wolfpack, that could be like the Chinese, the Chicoms, and they had like NWO Black and White, NWO Silver could be like the Iranians. But anyways, no, the China visit was interesting because I know like this is gonna sound kind of petty, like if you're still MAGA faithful,
Like us.
Yeah, but like there was some wild statements from Trump after the visit, particularly when he said that, well, what are we gonna do? We're gonna just kick out all these Chinese students? Like, you have to realize, like, the Chinese, ever since COVID, the Chinese student issue has been a very hot button red meat issue for the MAGA base. And for Trump to go there, probably as a conciliatory economic leveraging thing, not that you want to, like, what was the old statement, Constantine, like, don't take seriously everything Trump says, but like, that saying.
Yeah,
something along those lines. I couldn't tell you
Something
the
along
exact
those
wording.
lines, yeah. But it probably was just a conciliatory thing, but for him to go there and say, well, I mean, these people, they're the best and brightest, and what are we going to do? We're just going to kick them all out. Now, he did recently suspend some visa program thing. I don't know if it'll hold up in court, but for him to like verbalize that statement about the Chinese students is kind of wild.
Well, they're holding up
kind of
the
like-
historically black colleges. That's what he said last time.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, somebody just tell this guy that these Chinese students are involved in anti-Israel activity. And that it'll be open and shut case. It's all done.
Yeah, that's
It's
right.
over. They're deported. Yeah. They're gonna get the Claudine Gay treatment.
Uh-oh.
But no, but that's that's been a major contention for a long time, and like, I guess it goes to recently the whole debate over, and I recorded myself a little bit on this issue, the whole like boomer, make your own sandwich type of thing. You have like a lot of people that are forming, because I think for 2028 the political left, they're trying to like scurry around and see whatever they can get, whatever tree they can shake and maybe get fruit from it. You notice that something that I've said for a few years now, which is the left just embracing like unironic neoliberalism, to which the political right, or at least the conservative wing of the liberal spectrum in America, and rather like the Anglo world and in Europe in general, you see trying to reaffirm that economic system. And so now you have like abundance theory people. And I remember even when I was like a teenager, this discourse was happening about like, well, China's economic miracle. And because they're, they have like social control and they're communist, it's like, it's not, it's a hegemon against the West. But now you have like, on the one hand, you still have the red meat of economic protectionism and like anti-China hawkism, right? But then you also have on both sides one abundance theory, another trying to really wrestle with the implications of what China will, how China will extend themselves into the next few decades. And it's just kind of an incoherent mess because there's this antagonism, but it's like, I don't know. It's like,
But
I
have you
guess-
heard that China is bound for collapse any day now?
Right. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
another. Yeah, that was another thing. The ghost cities and all this stuff has not been. I'm not like one of these like cinephiles, right? I'm not like pro China or whatever, but like, it seems to me that there is a lot of these contentious issues that just goes by the wayside after a news cycle, and that's it. Like, but the Chinese student issue has been like such a big MAGA mainstay. And for Trump to just waffle on it out of, I don't know, some kind of ill-conceived pragmatism towards the Chinese, and maybe, he'll reverse himself eventually, as he always does. I don't know. It's just, to me, it seems very weird, that interview that Trump did after he met Xi Jinping. The whole thing was, especially with Iran hovering in the background. But the issue recently with the whole like boomer discourse over, what does it mean to live in a nation? Does it mean that your nation is a like second space, and talent and economic productivity is sort of like a neutral resource like anything else, like any guns and butter industry, that you could just pluck it from around the world and it's fine? Or is it a matter of cultivating I hate this stupid term, but for lack of a better term, cultivating the human capital that already exists in the nation from people from which a nation was born from?
Well, we need to take the best
yeah.
and brightest scammers from around the world and bring them here.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
make them
exactly,
governor
yeah.
of various
Yeah.
states.
There was that senator getting money from China. There was the whole like allegations with Hassan Piker that basically like huge swaths of leftist Reddit is like, funded by the Chinese. But then at the same time, like, that is real. Like, I wouldn't want to discredit it. It's true. Like, the Chinese do fund a lot of political subversion, but at the same time, like, people go way too far into that assessment. I've went to war with people in group chats over this. It is true that the Chinese do fund political dissent, But same with the Russians, same with other nations. But to go
It's
to
just standard soft power politics that
exactly, but
we
then
do
to
it
go
over
too
there, they
far,
do it over here. It ultimately
exactly,
doesn't
we
really
do it over
affect that
there.
much.
Yeah, no, but then when people extend it to where you're ignoring the homegrown problems of an ideological or a cultural issue or whatever, to where you're just going to blame the Chinese for everything or blame whoever for everything, blame the Russians for everything. So it's really like you're trying to thread a needle there. But I just think that when I saw that interview after he visited Xi, it's just like not to be like I don't want to be too mean, but like
No, please do.
no, but it's a travesty. It's the Chinese student visa issue has been so thoroughly gassed up the manga base, and I just can't help but think that as maybe if it's not Trump himself, but people around him, that they're give as their like most faithful soldiers on the ground in the trenches online are like warring against this notion that like a meritocracy open to the world and this sort of like boomer world order where you could just pluck people from anywhere and they're like movable cogs and there's no investment given to the young of a nation as people most faithful to him are doing this like online battle culture war thing, which rightly so. If you're if you're like a millennial or a zoomer and you know that your future is bleak, but then at the same time, like the same forces that you've politically entrusted to be your voice for 10 years now is going to give in to that same old GOP, which the GOP stands for a very colorful thing I probably can't say on YouTube. But like the same old like on the left you have like Matty Iglesias and Ezra Klein and abundance theory and like it's racism to like deny people opportunity when they're elite human capital.
1 billion
Fucking
Americans
Kaufman
by
Sinania.
2100.
Yeah, fucking Kaufman Hanania, like that side. Then on the right, you not the quote unquote right, you have like these stuffy conservative like Fox News Sean Hannity types who are like have this dream of meritocracy and why can't my son be as economically productive as a Fellahin slave from the third world? Like fuck off, like it's you're getting squeezed from both ends.
I do have to
And
say,
for
I agree with
yeah,
everything you said, but I think an angle about this that's been generally overlooked is that all these people still have this illusion about the America of the 1980s through
Yeah.
2000s
yes,
of
100%.
the idea that we bring these people over here and we enculturate them and then they become fifth columnists if they go back home.
Right.
Yeah.
Thinking that American culture still has the sway it did in the Reagan or Clinton era, that they'll go back to China and they'll liberalize it for us. Well, they're not going to.
They're gonna fight for
How did
OnlyFans and
how
McDonald's.
did I mean, besides America dropping nukes, how did America manage to subdue Japan so well for so long? I mean, the
Certainly was
cultures are
not decades of
radically
military occupation. That had nothing to do with it.
right, but
Yeah,
a lot of other countries might have tried the same thing and it wouldn't have worked out, right? Part of that is the soft culture, the soft culture approach of American geopolitical strategy, right?
right.
We have the culture everybody wants. All other cultures are a thing of the past. Part of it is that, right? Um,
It's mass media too. The Japanese were enamored by American products and
but they
shows and
didn't have to
everything.
be. What I'm
They didn't
saying
have to be.
is
Yeah,
how did that all happen, right? It's kind of like the Americans sending Louis Armstrong and other black jazz performers right after the defeat of Germany in World War II to get them, American enriched, culturally enriched with American culture um, after World War II because they were going to stay, and part of this is because I mean it's everything that I've said so far about how America is able to project its culture as the culture that every other culture wants to achieve. But it's also that America's sort of like a non-country in the sense that had it been another country in Europe that would have controlled Germany, or a portion of Germany. Over time, that would have been, I think, more difficult. Like Eastern Germany really didn't adopt anything significant from the Soviet Union, from Russian culture or Russian Soviet culture, etc. Um, you know, maybe a wish for a certain economic model is not the same thing as German boomers in Frankfurt who protested, who joined like BLM protests
Ugh.
6 years ago, right? Like like that would never happen um, without America being able to project its culture. It's I think now it's not working really that well with China. China is just I don't know. It's just it's too old, and it's just too secure and too strong, and it's able to withstand this cross cultural fertilization of American culture into its territory. Now, that doesn't mean it's not successful at all. That's not true. Like rich Chinese still want to park their money in America, right? That's
Yeah.
still an issue. But America's problem is that isn't enough. And of course, when things get difficult, like just a week or two after Trump's visit to China, China dumped more U.S. bonds and treasuries. But Japan again exceeded China in this. And then on the last show, Turkey has made like an enormous divestment as well. So now, why is that important? Because a lot of the reasons why the American economic system can still survive is because of the reliance on the American dollar as the world trade currency, but also reinvestment into that currency vis-a-vis treasuries and bonds, right? And one of the things that was speculated would be that Trump would convince Xi Jinping to allow uh, like average Chinese on a mass scale to buy U.S. treasuries and bonds. Now that's not a position of strength, right? Like I mean, it is and it isn't. It is in the sense that you need somebody to sign off for this. And it isn't because if you need to ask a country, with the second largest population in the world to do this, then that's also not really a position of strength, but a position of necessity. And the other thing I was going to say that all this talk, like it reminds me when they accused Russia of masterminding the 2016 election. Like, does anybody seriously does anybody seriously believe this after Massey? I mean, I know it felt good to pretend to oneself that that was true because you hate Russia anyways, right? But like, imagine thinking like spending $42,000 on Facebook ads was anything like APAC. Like the whole thing is preposterous. And what I'm saying is the amount of money that America spends in soft power, and you better believe this is part of the calculus when they talk about Chinese students. It's like Americans just believe that, or like American elites, just don't believe that the Chinese students are that big a threat. They don't. It's not like they
No, what
discounted
happened during
completely.
COVID demonstrated that they are. Like, it's not even like I'm not trying to be racist. I mean, Goran, our own government, our
I
own
know, and
intelligence
they're working with the
agency.
natives and see.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know, I know, I know, I know. They are doing that, and
yeah. This is a CSIS report. It's not like we're like, trying to be like xenophobic or whatever. Like, or sorry, what would be the term? Xenophobic. Uh, but like, no, it's a real.
it,
It's a real
but
security issue.
it is.
Yeah.
But as long as they see that the ledger is more that the Chinese want to imitate the Americans or the West,
Right. Right.
and
Right.
nobody like nobody honestly wants to emulate the Chinese. It has nothing to do with communism. It's an entirely different society. It's closed off, and they even introduced an immigration policy. They have devoted themselves that they will maintain Han demographic superiority as much as possible, because they're down to like 60% of China is Han Chinese. Now, when you
Mm.
factor in the other groups, like those groups are not like some other religion. They're not desperately apart, right?
It's
Like
not
if
like
you
a bunch
saw
of
pic,
Algerians showed up. It's the
Yeah.
right.
Cantonese or the
Like
whatever else.
you will hardly be able to tell them apart from their, you know, from the minorities, because like for the most part, except like say with some Uyghurs, you can't tell you can't tell if they're not part of the Chinese race or the Far East Asian race. But I agree with you. I know that the infiltration in Canada is something else. Canada cannot, because Canada is itself a projection of American culture, but without
Mm.
the strength, it's. I mean, America deals with Chinese buyers of, let's say farmlands or.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, there's actually similar issues in America, although America is so much larger in terms of their population base, but there has been like real political influence and within universities and espionage and things of that nature.
yeah,
But not to like totally overblow it like all these like China hawks do, but it is an issue.
Well, that's the ironic thing
So
about the China Hawks is they want all the students to come over, yet they want a sword constantly pointed at China, under the impression that yeah, there's going to be some intelligence leaks, but once again, these people are going to go home and they're going to preach the Enlightenment values of liberalism at home
yeah,
and
see
everything and
everything.
Golden Arches theory and blah 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 blah.
Everything's like the Cold War. Everything is like, oh, the Soviet spy that realized that how good it is in the West. It's like everything's a fucking Cold War
exactly.
narrative, you know? Yeah. Oh, they're gonna realize how good it is here, and then they're gonna betray their civilization for McDonald's and OnlyFans, Yeah.
And public transportation where you will get stabbed by a 30-time repeat offender out on bail.
Oh.
That's what Golden Arches theory is at the end of the day. Speaking of
I
Golden
mean,
Arches,
take your pick. Are you gonna die that way on public transportation? Are you gonna die by, some like faulty hardware on a Chinese bullet train?
one
Take
may
your
be more
pick.
dignified.
One maybe, yeah, yeah. You get sucked up by machinery, or you get
A freak
you get.
accident. It's just that. It's sure maybe it could have been
Oh
prevented, but
man,
I'd
we
also
live in hell.
I look at American infrastructure. We have let's just say H-1B crews crashing into bridges that still haven't been fixed.
Oh, there's plenty of American
Oh
infrastructure.
yeah, I could
Yeah, yeah,
East
yeah.
Palestine, that was completely memory hold. That was like 3 years ago.
That's like every bridge has a certain like a. Do you know that every bridge has like a decay date,
Oh yeah.
and like most of them have exceeded by like a few
Not
decades.
not to not to self dox too much, but I have a family member who was once involved in infrastructure. I'll just paint a very broad picture, and he told me some unsettling things about that.
Sure, some horrific, yeah, some some horrific facts about the building.
Yes.
Oh my god.
But with that being said, I suppose because I brought up Golden Arches theory, I do have a couple stories about Ukraine that are beyond the front lines. The first one is it was during the. I should start with the incident that caused the story I was going to bring up. It's the
Mhm.
heavier story, but it'll lead into the lighter one. So there was in Lugansk Oblast, which was one of the oblasts annexed from Ukraine into Russia in 2022, also one of the nascent breakaway republics in Ukraine going all the way back to 2014. There was a dormitory of students called Starobelsk, and that was
Yes.
struck by Ukrainian drones. The age range of the students there were 14 to 18, so high school, secondary school, if that's what you call it in your country. That age range of students right there. And about 86 of them had died. And uh, as
No,
far
it's 21 are dead.
21 are dead, and then it's
There's something like the last figure I heard, which was yesterday, 21 confirmed dead. Uh, at least 86 injured. Most of them are children that were killed. And the destruction happened, and of course the British guided them to do this. There
Yeah.
was three separate waves of attacks using drones, which the accumulation came to 16 drones in total in 3 waves. The second wave of attacks happened after kids were leaving the school. They literally hunted them down and killed them outside. This is exactly like what America did with at least one or two schools at the beginning of the latest war on Iran
Yes.
in
Yeah.
2026.
They were double tapping. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I will say, when I read it, thought it was all 86, and while it's still terrible, I'm glad to hear it wasn't as bad as I thought it was, even though it's still pretty bad with the way the attack was conducted. And I'll get into the Russian retaliation on that in just a minute here. But something that, a couple things that really frustrated me about that. Number one was the absolute duplicity of the Ukrainian side. No, the dual narrative, these are Russian orcs, yet they're also Ukrainian civilians under occupation, which is why we had to vaporize them with drones. So there was that. Number two, and this will be my moment of attacking the shitlibs for the episode. Those who were, I would say, incidentally right about the attack on the school in Iran. Like I said, they were outraged, and they just so happened to be on the right side, but it was simply because it was Trump's war. That's the only reason they cared.
That's the only reason they don't care.
Yeah,
Yeah. They
but
don't really
but
care.
This was actual terrorism. Right?
Yes.
And Ukraine
Yeah.
has done it has done it hundreds of times. And the reason they do it, right? The reason they do it is every once in a while, what they have to do is they have to do something which makes Putin look weak. And if he doesn't respond accordingly, which he's not going to, Putin is not going to find a Ukrainian school, though he could, and triple tap it and kill like 24 children. He's just not going to do that. And that is why they do it. It's a form of psychological warfare.
Yeah.
And that's why the Americans killed
Oh,
all
absolutely.
those girls. It's a form of psychological warfare.
And I mean, America and Ukraine, it's the exact same ruling class, completely integrated. The tactics of warfare are completely the same in that regard.
And they have West media cover as well.
Oh yeah, but I mean, the thing that really killed me, just to pick up on my previous point, is that the shitlibs, by and large, just did not know about this, and the ones who did thought it was who cares? Like they're all Russians anyway, and it's like, it's people, and I think there's a lot of people who are even on our side who will sometimes look at the left and think, or I shouldn't say the left because I think that's there's somewhat of a distinction, not much.
The
but somewhat.
libtards.
Yeah, the libtards who will look and think, oh well, maybe they're the sane, rational adults in the room, even if we don't like them. Maybe they're the same ones. No, it's just that their genocidal, bloodthirsty tendencies are directed towards Russians rather than Middle
It's
Easterners.
normie sadism.
Yeah,
Really.
exactly.
It's normie sadism.
That's what it is. And
Yeah.
going all the way back to 2016, I made the joke one time, probably on this show multiple times, is that anti-Russian sentiment has just become anti-Semitism for normies.
There was a lot of replacement, like for the conservatives, it was Muslims back in the 2000s, and for the libs now it's like Russia.
Yeah,
Like
and
this-
it drives it drives me up a wall, but I don't want to get too
Oh, and for the
distracted on
Gladio
that.
raid, it's also Russia.
Oh, of course. You
Yeah.
know, the
I
flooding Europe
remember
with migrants
there was this video that that Russia Today released where it was when McDonald's pulled out of Russia, but they just like converted all the stores to like their own brand, whatever they called it West Burger or something. And like there was this video of this kid who was like 8 years old. He was just eating. Like it was just like the Russia Today doing like, and Russia Today is like state media, whatever, right? But
and at least they have the decency to admit it.
it was exactly. It was an 8-year-old kid just eating a burger, and I remember people were going crazy. I think because he did have like a Z hat or something. But he was an 8-year-old kid, and it was like the deranged comments wishing for the death of this 8-year-old Russian boy.
Yeah.
Like it was incredible. Like I couldn't. This was like in 2022 or something.
Oh, at the height of it, that does
At
not,
the height of it,
that does
yeah.
not shock me at
Yeah.
all. Back when Ukraine was the
But
pivotal
apparently,
issue.
I don't know. The last time I checked, though, the civilian casualties in Kiev have been kept to a minimum. Or is that
the retaliatory strikes that
They're mostly
followed,
military
were
installations.
4 dead. But then a similar attack happened some weeks earlier, and again,
Yeah, yeah.
4 dead. Now, it's not disclosed whether these 4 dead are actually military or not. The Ukrainians have bragged that they, keep some of their armaments, their drone manufacturing facilities in public spaces. They
There was a
openly say
husband
that
and
as
wife
a
couple that made this TikTok video where they're like making drones in their home, like
yeah.
military drones with Semtex and everything. And so, if you say like the Russians take them out or another similar couple, then the Ukrainians could
Yes,
just say,
yes.
"Well, they're civilians," but they were manufacturing drones by the
But if
hundreds,
a single Palestinian house has a Kalashnikov in it, it's
or a
yeah,
book from an Austrian a painter of Austrians.
yeah, it's
Then
fair game.
yeah,
They can level the entire apartment block.
yeah, yeah. But sorry, you cut you off, GSP.
No, that's all I have to say.
Yeah,
Just yeah, you have to look at this as a kind of psychological warfare that the Ukrainians they always have been doing this, right? It's just that once in a while they have to um, make it more extreme because it's not ultimately what they want to do is change the Russian public's perception of the war, right?
yeah, yeah.
This is why they engaged in terrorist attacks, the assassinations, etc. That is why they do it. It is to outrage them and to demoralize them.
Yes, and I did want to get into something. Speaking of American soft power, about what the Ukrainians were saying, because there was, as part of the retaliatory strike, a McDonald's in Kiev that got, and I mean minorly damaged. I'm gonna show you the picture in just a second
The
here.
Golden Arch got caught.
Yes, the Golden Arch got like a little droopy. And
Oh God.
this is from the official McDonald's Ukraine. Looks like their Instagram account. So let me just go ahead and put this up. I do
I don't
not
even
have a
want to think about this.
I do not have a translation of what it means, but I'll go ahead and put it up on screen so the audience can see. Because it's just they're grasping at straws right now to try to prove Golden Arch's theory real. It would be comical if it was not sad. I'll just put it that way. And
Oh my God.
and here it is. It's loading right now. But there it is, just a slightly warped Golden Arches, and this is proof that the American Empire is still standing. They are as strong as ever. Nothing is gonna beat back the American Empire. Even the Russian Kinzhals and Orezhniks.
Iskander missiles can't melt Golden Arches.
So true. So true. But on a more serious note, before we touch just a little bit on the Middle Eastern stuff, before heading into the article that we're going to read, one does have to wonder, from the perspective of the Russians, I'm doing this purely as a thought experiment, I'm not advocating anything, I'm not suggesting anything. What excuse is there from the Russian security state's perspective and the Russian civilian populace perspective for Budanov to still be alive?
Yeah.
Like, look, yeah,
Mhm.
I can see Zelensky. He's useful in power. He's a moron. He is a laughing stock, and he does probably more to the detriment of Ukraine than to its benefit.
Yeah, they need him there.
Syrskyi, I'm not saying he's a terrible commander, but once again, he has the reputation of being the butcher of Bakhmut for a reason, General 200. So I could see
Right,
leaving
and
him.
he was for the Kursk offensive, which wasted a lot of potential for Ukraine. If
Mhm.
they hadn't done that, and they had kept their resources for the beginning of 2026, which is a good start for Ukraine in retrospect to all the other years, um, things
That's
might have
right.
been
That's
different.
true.
But he wasted thousands of men's lives in armament, and you see that like most of the arms supplies to Ukraine now are like they tend to be drones. You see a lot fewer infantry fighting vehicles, fewer armored personnel carriers, fewer tanks, Bradleys, that sort of thing. Um, I mean, the nature of the war has changed, But those things are still useful. They can, in a concentrated way, break lines. Some will have to be sacrificed, obviously.
Yes, but as we saw in Kursk, it was just a complete waste of that in some vain miracle offensive that was supposed to win the war.
It was a massacre of military hardware in Kursk.
Yeah, and that was.
And I think, yeah.
Syrskyi was a big proponent of that, so I could see even the utility of leaving him in place. But Budanov, as far as the Russian state's concerned, as far as the Russian civilian populace is concerned, there's no reason he should be walking today. And I think, especially with all of the high-profile individuals who have been targeted in Russia, that at the very least would have been, if one wants to look at it this way, fair retaliation for everything that's happened.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now they nearly killed him in what was it, 23 or 24?
He was missing for a while, and people thought that
he was injured. He was injured, but I think he survived. He looked changed after that attack. In the immediate period after the attack, and you're right, he was gone, but he was gone because he was recovering. That's my perspective on it. And now they did destroy one of those decision-making centers, but my guess is these guys are constantly moving locations, and the Russians don't have as good intel, and it's easier said than done. Like,
granted, I'll
it's very hard to assassinate a high-profile person at that level.
And that between the Western intelligence apparatuses, namely the CIA and the MI6, they, for all of their blunders throughout the past, they do have world-class intelligence, and that they are able to...
Yeah, I imagine, a lot of the resources have been probably invested in keeping a lot of these people alive, including Zelensky. So, I mean, there was just... I remember even back in the 2000s, there was always that, Western historiography of Putin as like this master assassinator of like, clipping off politicians and journalists left and right.
Yeah, not just a pencil pusher.
yeah, like...
Would you look at his career in East Germany, he was a pencil pusher. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
Not to take anything away from the guy, he's very intelligent in his own right, but... beyond just being a desk jockey, he wasn't out there snapping necks in the field. Let's put it that way.
There was a history of covert assassination programs into the Russian Federation when it came, for example, to Chechnya and other conflicts. I mean, there was always rumors that to contra the West's influence, even when they were controlling Yeltsin, there was activities of the GRU in Bosnia, but not as sophisticated as people would think. Like, I mean, for example, in the 2000s, Putin had amassed quite a number of resources and had a huge archive of intelligence on specifically Islamic extremism because of their engagements with Chechnya and because of his ability with Kadyrov to, really penetrate the higher echelon of the connections that the Chechens had made in the Arab world. And so, he gave a lot of that to George Bush. He was buddies at one point with Bush during the Cold War on Terror. And so, it definitely was true that Putin was engaged in a number of assassinations. Like, we all remember that journalist, right? Allegedly. But it seems that with Ukraine, apart from certain incidents like that one with Budanov, not to downplay everything Russia does, but like, he's not like chopping heads left and right in terms of high profile, like high key political assassinations. I mean, there's always rumors here and there, but whether or not that's just like Kiev independent or Western media speculation, it's, he's playing this, he's kind of coy when it comes to the whole thing. Like,
but what would it do to the Ukrainian public if he did start killing high-profile people like Budanov? Would that really demoralize them? I don't think so.
No, it would embolden them, obviously.
Yeah.
I agree, and I think that steering away from high-profile figures has been a wise decision overall. But with somebody like Budanov, I say that because
I agree with
because actually eliminating his strategic mind would set the Ukrainians back.
Yeah. And keep in mind, not that I want politicians and heads of state to be assassinated. I'm not saying that. But you were just talking about in terms of retaliatory strategic from the perspective of
Yes,
the
and,
Kremlin.
and I agree.
Right,
And
yeah.
with the certain precedents being set, say, by the Iran war or the Venezuela operation, it does make one ask these questions, even if
See,
they're not
that's the
advocating
thing.
this.
That's the thing, though. That's the thing. When it comes to Ukrainians, you know, they have done a lot of terrible things, and they have gone after Gerasimov and I think even Sergei Lavrov at one point. But like, you can kind of make sense of that from their perspective, in terms of just pure like war. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Okay, take away Gerasimov, take away Lavrov, go after Putin's mansion in the Black Sea, whatever, right? Ingalls Air Force Base. But like, that's the schoolgirls in Iran. What sense is there of that? What sense, like,
Yeah.
you know, it's just, I shouldn't say too much. Or I'm gonna get, you know what I mean? Like,
It's bloodlust. I'll just put it
it's
that way.
it's
and
pure and adultery
to temper terms there.
Yeah.
But I suppose that being said, we should talk about the ceasefire or lack thereof with Iran.
Oh boy. Yeah.
It's amazing that we're under ceasefire. Every time we have to launch a strike, we're temporarily suspending the ceasefire. Once the bombs drop, we're back to it, and you better not break it.
Now there was a lot of speculation before you recorded last episode that last weekend was going to be the weekend, but it seems that there was a little bit of a talkowing.
Yes, the official reason for that was the Gulf states, which, as I had said last episode, I am inclined to believe that's part of it, but I also think that it was the most convenient excuse because they were already looking for an out, and then they gave them the out there.
Yeah.
But as it stands now, I keep hammering on this. I've hammered on this ever since they initially announced the ceasefire. This is going to be the tactic going forward. They cannot afford a sustained war with Iran, so it's going to be a long-drawn, low-intensity conflict. That is going to be a constant ceasefire. The strait's going to be open. We're going to escort ships through. We're going to have skirmishes with the Iranians. Then everything's going to be settled. We're going to be a week away from a deal until 2037, I suppose. And it will just continue until they assess the Iranian regime will collapse, because what I believe, I have no concrete evidence of this, but judging from what I know about American strategic planners, considering the fact that they use the Gulf War as a model for the Russia-Ukraine war, by the way, that's one that people have forgotten about, but they're almost certainly using the Iraq regime change model, which is sanctions regime and low-intensity military campaign for several years until they can deliver the knockout blow. I could be wrong, but as it stands right now, with everything I am looking at, which is just the same information that's publicly available from all the usual sources, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to do this long-term weakening campaign until they judge the moment to be right for a ground operation to actually carry out regime change. Now, that's insane. It's not going to work. Iran is not Iraq in the 1990s. The United States has a fraction of the power it did even just 30 years ago. And, I mean, ultimately, that...
People were dying of dysentery in Iraq in the 90s.
Oh, yeah, and it's not,
you know
even
what
close.
I mean? Like, that's how bad things were.
The Iranians,
because
just this last week, reestablished full internet connection after their communications were damaged during the war. And, funny enough, of course, state propaganda does play a role, censorship does play a role, but there was a large outswell of even people who you would not normally expect to support the regime, so to speak, of people saying that, yeah, we won this war, no, you didn't topple it, we don't want your fake Shah or your whatever else you're trying to sell us, that Iran will decide Iran's future for itself. And that's what, like I said, of course these messages are curated, there's censorship, there's state propaganda, blah, 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 blah. But that was by and large the message being put out, which, whether it's organic or not, is a strong message. And as it stands now, most of the world looks at it, aside from these skirmishes, if the Americans are not going to commit, as far as I think everyone is concerned, this is the closest you're going to get to an Iranian victory, where they weathered the storm of the American empire. The American empire more or less conceded that unless we're willing to throw everything we have at this country, nothing's going to happen. So we have to settle with a quote-unquote deal, in which case Donald Trump is going to issue a diktat to the entire Muslim world as if he is the Sultan, going back to our Sultan Donald
Sultan
theory,
Donald.
all the way back that you must embrace the Abraham Accord, that the Arab states must embrace the Abraham Accords in order for a peace
the
deal with
Abraham
Iran.
Accords he ripped up?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I mean the Antichrist Accords.
Yeah, and he said if Oman doesn't do it, we'll blow it up. That's it. He literally said that. He said that today at a press conference. Yeah, I mean he's an idiot.
He can't tolerate a rival sultan. Okay, Oman is a sultanate. It's completely understandable.
It's true.
But I'm sure he'll have nothing but positive things to say about them come next week.
If he blew up Oman, that would be it. I mean, his support there would crater. But the one country it wouldn't crater in, of course, is Israel. He could literally become president of Israel.
Oh yeah, I can become the president there. Maybe I'll do that after I'm done.
Oh, please do.
That'd be funny.
Yeah, I bet Trump could win the Lebanon war in Bibi's position.
It would have never happened if I was in the Knesset. It would have never happened.
Yeah, Trump would have defeated Hezbollah on day one.
Yeah, that's right. Like the IRGC.
Oh my
Yeah,
god.
I mean, the Trump is still on a tightrope. He still has to prevent some kind of disastrous economic outcome that could affect the global economy
And the
He still-
midterms.
and the
And the
midterms.
midterm.
He
Yeah.
still has to do that. He has to be able to do that. He's buying time now. Today there was some exchange of fire between the Iranians and the Americans. Yesterday, the Iranians rather shot down 3 Reaper drones. The something Q9, I think, is the type that were shot down. So there is a low level intensity fighting still persisting every now and then. Boats are still going through. In fact, a few days ago, 40 boats went through. All of them are paying the yuan tax, right? And this is infuriating Trump because, of course, to touch back very briefly to your talk on Trump's visit to China, the Chinese gave no concessions, and I'm sure he thought he could go there and get the Chinese to convince the Iranians to go along, which is not going to happen. In a similar way that Biden thought that he could do that with China with regards to Russia.
Yeah. Yeah. But then what would be the position though of the Iranians in terms of opening up the strait, or will they just cut deals with everybody and make the issue kind of irrelevant?
You pay your $2 million, you go through.
Yeah.
You pay your 2 million and you go through. Yeah, exactly.
No, but then like that's what I mean. Like the plan trusters then will spin this as a victory of like, well, see, the midterms won't be a foregone conclusion. Trump is playing 75D chess, and
Trump is finished.
yeah,
For real this time. And this isn't just some blue anon
No, but that's
Russiagate
what I mean, the
schizo
Iranians
posting.
do-
Trump actually has destroyed himself. It's amazing.
But then again, I think from their perspective, they would say like, well, does the average American really care at this point? Which is a good argument. I mean,
It is a good
but-
argument in the abstract, but considering the fact that this war in particular, because of how much of an effect it's had on the global economy, they'll care in a roundabout way. They might not be able to put the pieces
true.
together, but they'll know that things are worse than they were just 2 or 3 years ago, and
Right.
they'll point at the guy at the White House, right or wrong. And in this case, they'll be mostly right.
Right, and grocery prices are set to increase in the next month. There will be reasons why they will care.
Yeah.
There are some already. Yes, not a lot of Americans have died in this war. obviously. If that had been the case, then Trump would even be in a worse position. And that's partly why he is not going along with intensifying hostilities even more. But you see the way that the press is treating him, and that to me, like when they press him on, well, Iran is rebuilding this, and he keeps insisting that they've been destroyed and wiped
They have
out.
to admit that their navy's done for. That was a good one, yeah.
Why
They have to
aren't you
admit.
admitting that we destroyed your navy? And then there's like satellite pictures of dozens of these little boats. The American fleet. Now the USS Ford has left, and if I'm not mistaken, right, like carriers do not travel alone. There is a little armada that goes with them, including submarines.
Yeah, an entire strike group.
Yeah, entire
Yeah.
strike group, destroyers, supply ships, etc. Right, so you're talking about a lot of ships, right? Now, when the Ford was there were 16 ships officially. I guess we're not going to count supply ships and whatnot, but 16 ships patrolling this enormous area outside of the Gulf of Oman, and there now there's fewer, and that's why the Iranians are able to get ships through. But the Iranians are also getting ships, not ships, but shipments of oil and other goods. Notice aluminum has increased in price as well, which is good for Russia, but not so good for the U.S. that imports about 21% of its aluminum.
Mm.
And so they are. So I think Iran is not like Iraq. To buffet your point, Constantine, they are in a stronger position. There's also much more coordination between Iran and China and Russia. A Russian ship just docked in northern Iran in the Caspian and sent more supplies. It's not the 90s and it's not the early 2000s.
And then there's also the railway through Central Asia that we've discussed these past few
Yes,
episodes that
yes.
goes.
So when
Yeah.
I say that the shipments are getting through, that is how they're getting through. Might
So,
take longer, but the price of oil is going to go up, and that suits the Iranians just fine. It also suits the Russians just fine.
but that's where the American empire stands right now in 2026. Eurasia is a fortress of your own making. You're not going to fray any of the constituent parties away from that. This isn't the 1970s. You don't have the kind of political or military power to make that happen. You can, I don't know, keep Ukraine just on a morphine drip and keep it alive and hope the Russians wear themselves out there. Right now, you're trying
Yeah.
to be conciliatory to the Chinese by saying, we don't care about Taiwan, even though we're going to care about Taiwan in the next 2 weeks,
Yeah.
as it goes, especially under Trump. Not only Trump, but especially under Trump, I should say. And then of whatever's going on with Iran, where it's this three-pronged attack that every time we double down on one front, it consolidates them closer together. And the idea that any of these constituent countries are going to split from each other is simply unthinkable with the current state of the American empire. Once again, it does not have the kind of power that America did even the 70s, 80s, or 90s to pull apart this block. The Russians and the Chinese are going to look at whatever issues they have in between each other and realize those are quite minor compared to the elephant in the room here, and that's only bolstered by Putin's most recent visit to both China and Kazakhstan.
Yep.
Mm. Well, it seems that there is. You get the sense that this happens a lot when it comes to later second term presidents, right? But you do have a sense that the sort of grand imperial project that was formulated by maybe not Trump himself, but certainly the vibes of Trumpism. You get the sense that a lot of these geopolitical excursions, as long as they're kept at a holding pattern, by holding pattern, I mean no significant change. I mean, people still die left and right, especially in Ukraine, but it seems like you can't really become this vision of a strong man who is changing the very face of the empire by just praying that these situations are kept at a distance and kept more or less in a form of slow entropy or stasis. And I think like a lot of people within the Trump administration are gambling on that sort of slow degrading entropy rather than quote unquote solving anything, because I think that's no, not to be like too harsh on Trump, but that seems to be the politics of empire for the past 30, 40 years now. I mean, maybe longer, ever since Vietnam. I mean, certainly with the global war on terror.
Oh, I agree. And
yeah,
Trump gets a
you
lot.
can't really move in that situation any which way. There's no real bilateral movement
That
as a leader. Yeah,
I absolutely agree. And Trump gets a lot of deserved flack, but I think a lot of people get lost in the weeds. They did this with Biden. They did this with first-term Trump, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
About this is just simply the office holder of the moment, and there is entire infrastructure beneath them. Now they can do things to work that infrastructure in a more favorable direction. They can expend all their political capital and their might restraining the empire. Now none of them have, but they theoretically could.
Yeah.
Yet it seems like with Trump, that was the understanding of both Trump 1.0 and Trump 2.0, that he was going to be at least try to rein all of this in. He wasn't going to dismantle it. He wasn't going to destroy it, but he was going to make it less insane. He wasn't Hillary Clinton, who was going to put a no-fly zone in Syria, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But here we are today, and we see the...
Well, like Biden was an auto pen that extended the 2010s for maybe 4 years.
Yeah, exactly.
It. That was pretty much just Joe Biden, Joe Brandon. So, and this always happens, but I don't, like, I'm trying to remember even the Obama years. It seemed a lot of the umph of Obamaism was pretty much expended by 2010, 2009. I mean,
his first midterms were a wipeout, and embarrassingly so for a guy who came in with such strong margins
as a prophet of American.
The guy who came, Bush left office with like a 13% approval rating.
Yeah,
and this is the guy who comes in. The
to
election
heal the wounds of America and racism.
Isn't even a question. It's flipping red states like Indiana in 2008, and then by 2010 it's a complete joke, and he's lost the House. He didn't lose the Senate in that election, but it was a complete... the candle burned at both ends and didn't accomplish much. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
And that, I think, Trump in both iterations is a less eventful repeat of that, where it's this initial burst of energy that completely fizzles out, especially in the second term.
Well, he did that in the first term. Remember when he couldn't repeal Obamacare?
Yeah, it wasted his entire first half of his term on that, and the entire Republican Congress did nothing about immigration, did nothing about...
And he couldn't do anything about Iran at that time. He just killed Soleimani. That was about it.
Yeah. That was...
Nobody remembers this. Nobody fucking cares, okay? I remember, okay, all you fuckers, I remember on Twitter in 2019, everybody was doomer posting about Trump.
Potato Trump! Bring back Potato Trump!
Everybody was sharing those memes. Don't fucking lie to me, okay? I was there, okay? I was in the group chats. Don't fucking lie to me. You all were sharing Potato Trump memes. You were sharing Trump memes where Trump was in Lucas's room. I saw that. Okay, fuck off. No, I say this with love. I say that, like, listen, I say this with love. I don't mean to totally castigate people, but I'm just saying, like, the vibes, the mood was very depressive around 2019. Now, I understand after 4 years of Joe Brandon and how, dark it seemed, like the 2010s were here to stay. I understand, like, the hope and, like, the revenge of Trump, the revenge of the Sith, or whatever. I've never watched Star Wars in my life, but, whatever, the analogy there. But, yeah, I mean, you have to realize, like, I remember, like, especially after Charlottesville, it was over. It was, like, to quote a luminary of that thing, I think it's kind of over. Like, That's such a great Richard Spencer clip. I think it's kind of over. You know, yeah, and so I think that certainly there was like, I think Trump had a lot more plausible deniability in the first term because of the implacable nature of the machine, the Washington machine that was against him, right?
Yes,
And
I completely agree. In
yeah,
that his first term, he had, I guess, what you call the learning curve. And that, I
exactly.
mean,
Yeah,
look, this is the guy who gave us both John Bolton and yet at the same time said World War One was a mistake.
yeah, yeah.
So
So yeah,
Trump's first term, I say so far, was a lot more interesting than his second term. His
well,
second term,
Trump was younger and he was more vital.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
and coming in off the energy of 2016, it was
Oh,
it was something
that was a
else.
perpetual high. Like you had a fucking cannoli in your pants in 2016 after the election for like a few months, man. I remember that, man. It was.
Cannoli in your
I got it. That was a line from The Sopranos where Tony switched his meds. He goes, "I got a cannoli in my pants all the time." No, but yeah, definitely. It was wild times, man. It was but you know, I mean, Trump was a much more, I think, much more of a tragedian figure by the end of his first term.
Yes,
But
especially
now,
culminating in the
yes,
2020 election, January 6th, et cetera, et cetera.
yes,
Uh,
exactly. Whereas 2025, 26 Trump, that is not tragedian. That is a purposeful fuck up. I think that's the difference. It's an unforced error. It's no longer
it's
a
a series of
tragedy.
them.
Yeah, it's a series of unforced errors.
I mean, I think
So
he knew the score after October 7th that
yeah, yeah.
he was going to get in. I
You
remember
think?
talking. I remember, yeah, I remember talking to um, someone at work. I'll just say that. Now he's my age. He's a shit lib, and we we were discussing. Of course, like any shit lib, they believe that the first attempt on his life was fake.
Yeah,
Right? It is the most whacked out conspiratorial mindset that I've ever seen on the left. Right? Because if you say was the blood real, half of them will say yes, it was, but the shooter intentionally grazed it. Because do you understand, like, just the risk they would take for that
yeah,
to happen? Like, the Trump look like does Trump look like he manages all his movements like so carefully in coordination? Like it is so stupid to say something like that, but they believe it. I said, and why would they do that? So he could win the election. I said he was already beating what's her name, the crazy lady with the crazy laugh.
Goon Mala Harris.
Yeah,
Kamala
yeah.
Harris. Yeah,
And he was up against
already
Brandon at that point, so it was a foregone conclusion.
Yeah,
yeah,
I said it was already over. Why would he have to do that to win? And I said that's not the biggest tell why he was going to win. By the way, I said, do you remember his first electoral victory? Do you remember? Would you say, and you have to couch it this way? Would you say that the media was doing their job about Trump? And he goes, oh yeah. He goes, so would you say that the second time around? And he just stopped.
yeah. The media was like they were like wall to wall, 24/7, 100% against Trump in 2016. It
Yeah,
was
yeah.
incredible.
So what happened?
Do you know
Yeah.
So what happened is that even before they attempted to take his life,
Oh, they
or
got used to
the
him. They
fake
got used
attempt,
to him.
what happened? The first 6.5 months went by. Like, so what happened? I mean, as soon as Trump announced he was running for president, he was already a news article. I said they wanted him to win, and it has to do with Israel. Okay, he's going to give Israel more stuff than Biden did, and Biden already gave more stuff to Israel than almost any president before him. So I said that's what it comes down to.
Do you know what moment always sticks out in my mind from Trump's first term?
Mm.
when he bombed Syria in 2017, and I think it was some CNN
Yes,
commentators
yes.
like, "This is
Yeah.
the night Trump truly became president."
Yes.
Uh,
yes.
oh my god.
You're not a president until you wage war for Israel. It's just that simple. But while we are on the topic of retrospectives, would you like to get to the main event of the night?
Sure.
Oh yeah. Do you want to talk
So-
about Massey?
Uh,
Well, later on,
yeah.
definitely.
Later on, we'll talk about it. Yeah.
So I've teased this really ever since the start of the Ukraine war, but this is something we've been mentioning for a number of years, maybe even slightly before the Ukraine war, but ever since Russia officially invaded Ukraine, the full-scale military invasion, unjustified, unprovoked, etc., etc. This has been a piece we've been referencing. Now, this is not some schizo publication. This is from GeorgeSoros.com. This is his website. From the Open Society Foundation, November 1st, 1993, George Soros in his own words. So I'll start and I'll read a few paragraphs before handing over to one of
I was
you.
like not even. I was, I think, barely 1 year old when this published.
I was not alive.
Yeah, you were not alive. Yeah. Oh my god. That's like, you know what's funny? Like there was this tweet where someone took, you know, that site APAC Tracker?
Yes.
Someone they ran Rabbi Yusuf Misrakai and he had 0%. He had the green card, no APAC money. And I remember in this viral tweet, the top comment, the reply on Twitter was, "Coaches don't play."
Oh, wow. Coaches don't play.
So George Soros, 0. I had to share that. That was like so.
That's brilliant.
I was fucking brilliant. 0 money from APAC. Rabbi Yusuf Misrakai. Coaches don't play.
Well, I
Oh,
think
that was
right
so
now we're
fucking
looking at the
funny.
greatest coach of all time, George Soros.
Oh man, he's greater than fucking, you know, Scotty Bowman with Detroit in the mid '90s.
So
All
our
right.
title for tonight is Towards a New World Order. The future of NATO. Right there. You know, they wonder why do the conspiracy theorists always say New World Order, and then you go and you look, and they shoved it down our throats.
You know what's funny is that I think he was doing this as a troll because, you know, okay, I know I was only 1 year old at the time, but you know it was a very popular book in 1993 in certain circles?
Do tell.
Late Great Planet Earth by Hal Lindsey.
Mm.
All the evangelicals are reading it. They thought, you know, year 2000, Christ coming back, it's over.
We're gonna
in
get
Zion.
the million years of Israel.
Yeah.
Million
yeah,
years
yeah.
of Israel.
It's gonna be
the
great,
world will
guys.
Be recycled, you know. Oh my god. No, I think he was trolling those like evangelical conspiracy theorists. They're build the Tower of Babel. We're all gonna speak one language, the one world ecumenical religion.
Well, you
which
know
will
the
be
only way to
like,
prevent that, right?
The Abraham Accords?
Yeah. Well, no,
Yeah.
close. We got to build the third temple. That's the only way to
Yeah.
stop that.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
I see your Antichrist, and I raise you an Antichrist. That's what it was, just throughout the 1990s and 2000s, and really through today.
No, but I think he was trolling those.
No,
like,
I
evangelical
believe it.
conspiracy
I
theorists,
fully
yeah.
believe it.
Oh yeah.
But to begin, the coming world disorder. At least he admits it. It is clear that the world order that has prevailed since the end of the Second World War has come to an end, and he's saying this in '93. It had been based on two superpowers vying for world domination. They stood
Well, if you want to be a leader and a killer, you gotta admire the leaders and killers. Like you gotta read the literature. You gotta read them. You know, like Kali Muscle. You gotta read them.
Should I read this in the accent? No, my voice can't tolerate that tonight. It's,
you know, I know this is gonna sound weird, but I admire Soros, man. You know? You're gonna be a leader and a killer. You gotta admire the leaders and killers. You know, that man invented, you know, NGOs. Progressive Twitch streamers. You know, got all of the Soros, man. Got all of it. You out there, you like Twitch, you like NGOs, you take money from progressive organizations. You a Soros head, man. Come on. This is great. This is great. Kino.
They stood for diametrically opposed principles of social organization, and they considered each other mortal enemies. The global conflict between them governed all local conflicts. Occasionally, it came to actual fighting, but both sides avoided an all-out confrontation because each side had the capacity to annihilate the other. It was possible to score local victories, but they had to fall short of threatening the survival of the other side, because it might have endangered one's own survival. The prevailing order was called the Cold War. The name was apt because both sides were mobilized for war, battle lines were drawn throughout the world, and internal conflicts within each camp were kept frozen by the external threat. The collapse of the Soviet Empire was an internal development. Undoubtedly, external pressure played a role, but was not directly responsible for the collapse. Otherwise, it would have been resisted. But that internally generated revolutionary event, very organic, I'm sure, has also changed the prevailing world order. All of this is clear now, but it's far
who
from...
was one of the first businessmen besides bankers that was allowed into Russia?
I can only guess.
George Soros.
Wow.
Yeah,
He was one of the first. Yep.
Thank you, Gorbachev. Thank you, Yeltsin. You're truly heroes of civilization. Well, we are in unpayable debt to both men. Not only the Russians, not only the former Soviet Union, but the entire world. We can never repay that debt to those late great men. All this is clear, and you're going to learn why as I read more into this article. All this is clear now, but it was far from clear at the time it occurred. It caught most of the participants unaware. This is true of the leadership within the Soviet Union, but even more true of the leadership in the West. Gorbachev and his team were conscious that their internal reforms would change the world order. Indeed, they were looking for fundamental change in the relationship between the superpowers as the key to making internal transformation successful. It should be remembered that the foreign ministry was the only part of the Soviet bureaucracy that was squarely behind perestroika, and foreign policy was the only part of the so-called new thinking that was properly elaborated. Gorbachev's concept was to forge an alliance between the two superpowers, which would dominate the United Nations and make it a workable institution. Oh, how wonderful.
Oh my God.
You have to be so silly to believe. Oh my God.
You know what's a great documentary?
Do tell.
I know that Niccolo Salo, he recommended this. This was back when Frontline wasn't as controlled as it is now. There's this documentary from 1994. It's called from Frontline. It's called The Struggle for Russia.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful watch.
They say shit that they would have never said nowadays about what actually went on. It's on YouTube. Highly recommend going watch.
We might
after you listen to this program, of course.
Naturally,
But,
and I don't know how much we can show for copyright reasons, but we might have to do a review of that at some point.
We could, yeah. I could rewatch it. Yeah, it's great.
It will be recalled that one of the first acts of the new regime was to pay up its arrears to the United Nations. Gorbachev, how could you? I see why this man is so reviled in the modern perception. The Soviet Union was there. It was delinquent on its UN payments for decades. And
fuck.
That's why the Soviet Union collapsed. Gorbachev bankrupted them that way. That's what I believe. It's on the spot, new theory. Behind the concept lurked the hope that Western aid and Western investment would help reform the Soviet economy and not plunder it. But there was no plan. Indeed, no conception how to accomplish this. I know from personal experience because I had set up an international task force for creating an open sector in the Soviet economy under the authority of Prime Minister Rezhnikov in 1988, and I was appalled by the lack of clarity and the inability to implement anything that characterized proceedings.
Why are they short-dicking me? Why are they short-dicking me? Like, fuck off.
You kind of want to tell all the boomer content.
If only they let me rape them harder, they would have been better. Like, that's what he's saying.
It is funny how often Soros gets written off as a boomer-con conspiracy theory when...
Yeah.
Like, imagine trying to tell, like, all the people who are very Soros-brained on, let's just say, stupid things, admittedly, that he supported the collapse of the Soviet Union. What then?
Yeah.
What do we make of that?
Yeah, I wonder if James Lindsay, I mean, he was on the boat and he collapsed the Soviet Union.
Even so, events
You
could
know
have.
why these fuckers, they don't, like, listen, the history of Russia and Eastern Europe in this period in the 1990s, and not just because I'm like a millennial nostalgia type, whatever, but this is like literally one of the most fascinating histories in recent memory and in world history in general. And these fuckers, like James Lindsay, they don't read anything beyond their like butchered narrative of, I don't know, Hegel or whatever. And it's like they can't read, besides the Wikipedia page. And it's like, if you like look into people like Soros, the history is actually more terrifying, more compelling, but more nuanced than anything that these people could come up with just by reading what he's saying. Like this one article will give you more of a modus operandi to how George Soros thinks than a million Helen Pluckross and James Lindsay lectures.
No, that's as much
yeah.
as much as I hate it. There's a reason we're on GeorgeSoros.com.
Yeah.
Because they often just tell you what they believe, and it's amazing how transparent they are and how little they care what you think.
Same as reading Brzezinski.
Exactly.
Same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even so, events could have taken a different course if the Western leadership had any comprehension of what was going on in the Soviet Union. It would not have been so difficult to assist Gorbachev to procure some positive results and show that perestroika could work and help me pillage the entirety of the Eurasian landmass. See, you do have to read into their words, admittedly. But the idea that Gorbachev was genuinely seeking both assistance and alliance simply did not penetrate into the minds of a leadership that was bent on waging the Cold War. By the time it did, it was too late, or at least it could be argued that it was too late.
Again, given the devil his due, he's 100% right about that.
That is correct.
They totally underestimated what Gorbachev was trying to do. They didn't care. They thought he was another functionary, till they learned later. And I'm actually embarrassed. I'm embarrassed at how much clarity you can get from such an evil man in this world. Like it's astonishing. And that's what I mean. These people, they don't have the full picture, because people like James Lindsay, they don't see the geopolitical implications. They don't see how do you rot a civilizational base from the inside. They don't get that picture. They just see that, oh, George Soros gave money to fucking, I don't know, trans women of color or whatever. It's like, but yeah, sorry, I'm cut.
No,
go ahead.
If you want to pick up from this article, from the Even Today, if either of you want to take it, I can keep going, but if one,
Can you send it to me on Telegram?
If you scroll up just a couple messages, it should be one of my more recent ones to you. But I can shoot you the link again if you didn't have it.
No problem. I'll find
You want me to continue reading?
Yeah, you can pick up from Even So if you want to, Even So, events could have taken a different course.
Even I can't do his accent.
Yeah.
Even so, events could have been taken in a different course if the Western leadership had any comprehension of what was going on in the Soviet Union. It wouldn't have been so difficult to assist Gorbachev to produce some positive result as to show that perestroika could work. But the idea that Gorbachev was genuinely seeking both assistance and alliance simply did not penetrate into the minds of a leadership that was bent on waging the Cold War. By the time it did, it was too late, or at least it could be argued that it was too late. Even today, and by today he means 1993, the collapse of the Soviet Empire is not properly understood. This is just the normal delay in registering change. There is a fundamental lack of understanding, which comes from working with false premises. The State Department is concerned with the relationship between states. That was appropriate during the Cold War, when the world map was well defined and kept in place by the rivalry between the two superpowers. But it is not appropriate today, when existing states and empires are breaking down and new states are brought into existence, many of which do not really qualify as states. We need a totally different conceptual framework for dealing with the situation, because it involves not only relationships between states, but also relationships within states, or what used to be states.
So he's saying we need an open society?
Yes. That is a better geopolitics education than I ever got when I took IR classes in university. I shouldn't say that. I had a few brilliant IR professors. I One time I was given courses by Canada's top Sovietologist. If you look up Juris Dreifelds, um, I believe he was canceled for saying certain things about a certain nation in the Middle East. But no, this is brilliant. This is 100% brilliant. He's right. He's right. I mean, you could say that it's like, end of history globalization cope, because a lot of those states eventually would recrystallize. But for the time in '93, I mean, that's probably the best analysis you're gonna get.
Oh yeah,
Um,
it's his
yeah,
machinations out right out in the open.
But
yeah,
I think that Soros here is also projecting a little bit of himself, and that is
yes,
he's identifying with Gorbachev.
yeah,
He doesn't see that, and at this point in time, you don't have the coordinated meshing of the neoliberal ideology with geopolitical military action and soft power
yeah.
infiltration of various countries and regions, right? So he's
That all had to be
basically
invented by first principles in Russia.
right. So
Yeah,
he thinks if you guys had paid attention to Gorbachev, right, and in his mind, Russia could have been reformed the correct way, the Soros way, right? And everything. But he looks at the mistrust, or I will say the apparent mistrust of the former Soviet Union by the Cold War warriors. He looks at that as an impediment. Now you don't you see the two working in coordination for the last 20 years, so last 25 years. So it's interesting that in a way he's kind of identifying with Gorbachev as a misunderstood man, but he hasn't how can I put this, he hasn't completely aligned himself with, or the Western elites, particularly the American elites, have not fully adopted his positions, which they would later, right? One of the ayers, for a good example, is Hungary, right? Um, Orban, for all his faults, did ban uh, George Soros universities, and there were no less than 14 judges that received money from the Open Society. I don't have to tell you how many more lawyers received them in the U.S. But so this is an interesting period before these two wings of Western power begin to work together. Um,
yeah.
I still think he has a point. I agree with you. I think he has a point in that maybe everything we're experiencing now could have gone differently. Blah blah blah. But we'll get to the juicier bits later.
Well, if I recall, I could be wrong about this, but if you look at the percentage of people that retained political positions in the Duma, in the Kremlin, from the Yeltsin years, the Yeltsinites, I think, have largely been chased out,
Oh, they're
or
gone.
they're gone.
Yeltsin is reviled.
Yeah, yeah. No, but for example, Rutskoy, he had a position with Putin even in the early 2000s. So, like that, I mean, as Yeltsin's main opposition, he fucking locked him out of the parliament building. Um, he's still there, but the Yeltsinites, they either left or
Whatever
I'm
was
sure
left of them
some of
by
them.
2022 was
It's
completely,
over.
yeah.
Yeah,
There were stragglers, but with time and with certain events, especially the sanctions and the war, they have all been scattered in every direction.
yeah, yeah. So I'd imagine they didn't have a long political life as soon as, I mean, well, even as soon as 2008, happened with Georgia and then Crimea. So, uh, so long for the Yeltsinites. But reading on, it is characteristic of revolutions that people do not fully understand what is going on. That is why events spin out of control and the prevailing order breaks down. There is no doubt that the collapse of the Soviet system amounted to a revolution, and this fact is now generally recognized. But the collapse of the Soviet Empire has been also brought about a revolutionary change in the prevailing world order, and the fact is not properly recognized. Indeed, it is widely ignored. People in the former Soviet Empire cannot help being aware of the revolution, but people in the Western world have not so been directly affected. The foreign ministry of the former Soviet Union did produce some new thinking, even if it was rendered irrelevant by subsequent events. But our State Department has done practically no new thinking at all. Unless we develop a new frame of reference, the world order that prevailed since the Second World War is likely to be followed by world disaster. Oh no! You might lose your power!
Once again, you might disagree with his with the reasons he thinks this, but his analysis is correct.
Exactly. Yeah. Here's where things get this chapter this paragraph is very important here. A conceptual framework. I should like to put before you a conceptual framework in terms of which the present situation can be understood. It has two major components. One is a theory of history, which particularly reference to revolutionary change. The other is a distinction between open and closed societies. The two elements are interconnected. They share the same philosophic foundations, but the connection is not very strong. It is possible to distinguish between open and closed societies, as Karl Popper did, without any insight into the process of revolutionary change. It is possible to use my theory of history without introducing the concepts of open and closed societies, as I myself have done in my dealings in financial markets. But at the present moment in history, I find a combination of the two elements particularly revealing. I'll put forward my conceptual framework with some trepidation. For one thing, it is not fully developed. For another, it would take more than a few minutes to propound it properly. But I must make the attempt because I have used it and it works, and I have been repeatedly surprised at how different it is from the way most people think. A theory of revolutionary change. My theory of history is based on the recognition that our understanding of the world in which we live is inherently imperfect. We have to act without full knowledge of the facts because the facts are created by our decisions. They can be correspondence between our view of the world and the actual state of affairs, because the actual state of affairs is not independently given, and our view of the world has nothing definite to correspond to. Therefore, there must always be a discrepancy between the participants' thinking and the actual state of affairs, and the discrepancy provides the key to understanding the course of history. So this is basic theory, object, ontology as it is applied to politics. That our view of the world is partly a creation of the facts on the ground, partly conjectural.
And it applies to everybody but him.
Exactly. He can see he has the omnipotent view above the ground.
It's
but
kind of like Tony Blair.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He can see the draughts in the table, to quote Heraclitus. This is like a very pragmatic sort of ontology when it comes to politics. There are times when the discrepancy is relatively minor, and there is a tendency towards convergence between people's view and the actual state of affairs. This is the case when prevailing institutions are flexible enough so they can be adjusted to meet people's desires, and there are critical processes at work which bring people's thinking in line with practical possibilities. In these near equilibrium conditions, the discrepancy does not influence the course of events to any given extent, and it can be safely neglected. It is in these conditions that the timelessly valid generalizations of economic theory, perfect competition, efficient markets, the discounting of future expectations are relative. But there are times when the discrepancy between perception and reality is very wide and shows no tendency towards convergence. On these occasions, the course of events follow a totally different pattern, and the normal rules do not apply. These far from equilibrium conditions arise as two extremes of changelessness or rigidity on the one hand, and changeability or instability on the other.
I'll take it from here.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
The Soviet system under Stalin was a good example of the first kind of extreme, where the Bolshevik dogma was extremely rigid and incapable of modification. Society itself was highly regulated and frozen into inactivity. Yet there was an enormous gap between the prevailing dogma and reality, with absolutely no tendency for the two of them to come closer together. If anything, they drifted further apart as the outside world continued to evolve. The progressive collapse of the Soviet system after 1987 is a very good example of the second kind of extreme, where the participants' thinking failed to keep up with the changes that were occurring in the real world, and because of the large divergence at a time of rapid change, events spun out of control. There was a catastrophic acceleration in the pace of events and breakdown and disintegration, which perhaps not yet reached its climax. It is impossible to foretell how far it may go. I have been speaking of a quote-unquote black hole, and there can be little doubt that we came close to it on Sunday night, October 3rd. Indeed, it was only the prospect of that black hole that finally convinced the army to intervene at 2 a.m. Monday morning. This is referring to Black October in Moscow, with the attempted, if not overthrow, but restraining of Yeltsin by the Russian Duma, uniting more or less all of the Russian political spectrum behind them in the army, and behind them with the army on Yeltsin's side. And there was the shootout. How many casualties were in that? Do you guys remember?
Oh, there was like,
There's several dozen, I think.
yeah.
And this was like from high profile people, like legislatures, politicians, people who actually wielded some societal influence. And this was the precedent for Yeltsin's crackdown and his rule by decree throughout the 1990s.
Yeah.
It's possible that in retrospect this may prove the turning point in the process of disintegration, but it's also possible that it's only a temporary resistance point at a trend that has not yet run its course. Very interesting. I have made a special study of these conditions of dynamic disequilibrium, both in financial markets and other settings. I find the boom-bust pattern that is common in financial markets is also very helpful in understanding the rise and fall of the Soviet system. But of course, one must not apply the pattern uncritically. I shall not go into details of the theory, but the most important point I want to make about the boom-bust pattern is that it is a time-bound, one-directional process, but is open-ended and also characterized by discontinuities. That is to say, a prevailing trend can be reversed at any time, and indeed, an eventual trend reversal is an integral part of the boom-bust patterns, at the point at which the trend is reversed is not determined in advance. Indeed, in the financial markets, for every boom-bust pattern that becomes fully developed, a great many are aborted in the early stages.
But that's the thing. What's very interesting here is that he's proposing the sort of like ideological backbone of this is like the open society theory, that you can have total transparency of information, of social institutions, of the process of political, cultural, and economic socialization, and this will guard you against the excesses of other quote unquote rival ideological systems that he thinks are inferior in terms of the perception people have of what's actually going on and what people are being told in real time about what's going on. And so he thinks this is very dangerous to have this disconnect. But nowhere does he say that, some kind of like bullshit notion of like true democracy or whatever is the way to go. To him, it's about engineering that equilibrium between the perception people have of the system itself and the openness to information, or what people perceive to be an openness of and transparency of what's happening and how it plays out in real life. So he's saying, yes, perception is reality. But out of those two things, one is very implacable. The other is kind of malleable. Mm-hmm. And the thing with the Soviet system that he correctly, pointed out is that after a while, you can't really control people's perceptions when they're in bread lines. And so how can you instantiate a system in which from the very beginning, any sort of ideological dalliance is quashed in the afterbirth? And so this is the key to the New World Order. This is the key to global liberalism, right? One, the reality of situation on the ground will always change. The real is like a very, merciless taskmaster. But the perception people have on the real, that can be changed. that can be brought to an equilibrium. So he's saying that, well, the problem was you have this very dramatic event by the time you get to Gorbachev and Yeltsin, and you can't really control that, and so people go up against you, and so I'm sure he's going to elaborate here in the Open and Closed Society if you want to read on. But you guys have any thoughts about that?
No, I think you put it perfectly.
The only thing I would say, and this isn't to add onto anything, but I just had the thought. Uh, I'm pretty sure George Soros has had some insider trading.
Yeah.
Some.
Like, yeah. I mean, now every president does too. But
did he implode the
it's
British
funny that
pound?
it's
He
funny
did.
that he's. Yeah, he did. Now it's funny that he's giving out this very sagacious advice on statecraft when and he seems to understand these universal rules that apply to all states, but I mean he doesn't he himself doesn't live by them.
No. No, I mean, because total transparency of information, that's like, that's deadly to a businessman of his caliber.
Right, and no
Yeah.
society has ever done it or will do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I used to have these conversations with a friend of mine. And he used to say, like, at the top level, it is a libertarian world. Like, they are constantly all competing with each other to ultimately nullify them, so that there is only one power that is human nature. Um, but it hasn't happened yet. In
Yeah.
any case, um, oh, where did you leave off?
We're on
Open and closed society.
another
Okay.
important feature is
Open
Oh,
and
yeah,
closed
so like the
societies.
paragraph right, the paragraph right above.
I am going to read in Soros's Open and Closed Societies. This brings me to the second part of my conceptual framework. To understand the current situation, I contend that it is very useful to draw a distinction between open. This distinction is based on the same philosophical foundations as my theory of history, namely, that participants act on the basis of imperfect understanding. Open society is based on the recognition of this principle, and closed societies are in its denial. In a closed society, there is an authority which is the dispenser of the ultimate truth. Open society does not recognize such authority, even if it recognizes the rule of law and the sovereignty of the state. The state.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Fuck. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. They don't recognize that there has never been a state that doesn't recognize all actions are based on imperfect knowledge. Okay, this is
They just label it
this is
misinformation or
this is
disinformation. Like, yeah.
this is woo woo neoliberal theory. This is bullshit.
Yeah.
Absolute bullshit.
And of
This is
course,
the
he
part.
doesn't believe any of this. This is
No, of course.
Absolutely not.
it's simple narrative craft.
Buy my product. The state is the state is not based on a dogma, and society is not dominated by the state. The government is elected by the people, and it can be changed. It's so ridiculous. It's so,
Oh, wait,
but you
wait.
know how many people bought this, right? Above all, there is respect for minorities and minority opinions. I think that the distinction between open and closed societies is more revealing in the present situation than the Cold War distinction between communism and the free world, because it allows us to see the Soviet system as just one particular form of closed society. The important thing to recognize is that an open society is a more advanced, more sophisticated form of social organization than a closed society. This is part of the messaging. This is part
Yeah.
of the messaging that is there to make the people within the former Soviet Union look to America for how they're going to reorganize themselves. Right. That, well, in this case, George Soros, but it's almost one and the same thing, anyways.
It's but that he's right though. Like systems of control in a quote unquote open or the pretense of an open society is much more sophisticated. You have allo exploit, you have inner
Yes, yes,
exploitation, you have
absolutely.
psychopower, Byung Chul Han, yeah, like that. Yeah, you have psychopolitics that basically,
But now
yeah,
those same open societies now know that that it was false.
now
Now
they
they
no, but
know.
then they have
Now
to
they know.
pivot. Yeah, now
Right
they
now
know.
they know.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
talk about a boost and bust cycle, right? A boom and bust cycle. Like now they know that that's not true. But um, I can tell you, back then when I was a young adult in my 20s, people literally believed this shit.
yeah. You saw it a lot in the New Age movement that time as well. It
Yes.
was yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Um,
Well, a
but
closed society may expend all its energies on maintaining the existing order. An open society takes a state of law for granted and builds a complex structure of institutions on top of it, capable of producing wealth, prosperity, and progress forever and ever and ever. The
In
structure cannot.
perpetuity.
Yeah, the structure cannot evolve if the proper foundations are missing, and it can collapse if the foundations are disturbed.
no, but
Uh,
he's right though because okay, the prosperity that's like catnip for people, right? That's
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
catnip for libtards, right? But he's right in the sense that in some ways it's as we've seen in the last 30 years, it's actually harder to take down this quote unquote open democracy society because these institutions have
Because
built
it's
up.
not open.
Exactly. But also, these institutions have created layers upon layers of power and defense mechanisms that test resistances in ways that are decentralized just enough. Whereas closed societies, quote unquote, like communism, fascism, national socialism, they have a loci of power. They have a formalism of power
Yeah,
where you can visibly see a structure, a Politburo, an aristocracy, a Führer, a Commissar. Whereas these societies, apart from just figureheads, people know that power is diffused within these bureaucracies and institutions. And so even like people nowadays like Curtis Yarvin who want to say like, no, we have to return to formalism and we have to have like CEO monarchs. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, are you no, that would give the whole game away.
right.
That wouldn't like this is like Silicon Valley coder mindset, whereas people like Soros are looking at it from a more nuanced perspective, and they're saying no, you have to decentralize power, you have to make it faceless, you have to make it internalized within the psyche of the average individual fellaheen wage slave pro. I was gonna say another term I can't say on YouTube, but that is a much more direct even though it's not direct, it's a much more effective maintenance of control,
Yeah,
the control society
he's
itself.
advocating for the
Yeah,
so-called open society and democracy implicitly
yeah,
in these passages because it does two things for him. It reinforces the belief of the power of the public, and it conceals his class.
exactly. Yeah,
It is
like
his
oh, if we're
it
gonna
is his
CEO mon-
it is his
yeah,
class that is there working, influencing the institutional structure of this so-called open society that's constantly perfecting and evolving. Well, it is constantly perfecting and evolving for him, right?
yeah,
Um,
not for you, for him.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, but he pretends magnamoniously that this is for everyone. Everyone benefits. It's such
The
positive drivel.
minorities and the minority opinions and the selection of governance,
Everyone.
all of the slop he's been feeding you this entire article.
yeah.
Remember that Simpsons episode where uh, uh, I don't know if there was Troy McClure. Hurrah for everything!
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah.
For
Hoorah
everything.
for everything. Sorry, people. Um. Oh my god. No, but that's what I mean. Like Curtis Yarvin, he's gonna come in there. He's like, oh, or if we don't like the CEO, our king, then the shareholders can get together and have a meeting, and it'll be like on the blockchain, so everyone can see it. It's like, Are you kidding me? No.
Yeah, why
That's
do
gonna
that
throw
when
in the
Soros can
game.
just fund another color revolution?
Yeah, yeah. Are you kidding me? To quote another pro wrestling analogy, to quote Jim Cornette, that's gonna kill the business. You're gonna reveal the whole thing. You're gonna show him blading. It's fuck. You're just doing it courtesy. It's gonna kill the business. It's gonna be the fucking curtain call where Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, they're supposedly rivals with Triple H and Shawn Michaels. They're going out there hugging and kissing and saying, "Good luck from billionaire Ted's giving you this big contract. Good luck out there." And it was on live television. You don't fucking do that. Can't. I'm sorry. No curtain call. Man. So just look up the WWE curtain call for those who don't know this event. Expose the business. So anyways, it's just a Montreal screw job all the way down.
I'll take it from here with a diagnosis of the present situation.
All right, yeah.
The Soviet system was a universal closed society because communism was a universal dogma. But the system had broken down and communism's dogma was well and truly dead. There was a chance, at the early stages of the breakdown, to make the transition to a universal open society, but that would have required a major effort on the part of the free world, and the effort was not forthcoming. Therefore, that option was no longer open. The universal closed society had held together by some communist dogma that had broken down into territorial components. Some parts, like Poland and Hungary, that's how you can tell this article is dated, are making progress towards a more open society, thanks to a certain someone, very much influenced by Soros and his ilk, and he'll outright admit to that, don't worry. But even those countries tend to fall back on what prevailed before the communist regime. Oh, he's schwitzing a little, I think, about that. Other parts are reconstituting themselves as more or less closed societies, or they just continue to disintegrate. Oh, we're gonna be getting into the Yugoslavia stuff.
Oh, they're going back to their traditions. Oh my God.
We can't have that. No.
Poland going back to Catholicism can't happen.
To constitute a closed society, you need to mobilize society behind the state. Since communism is dead and universal ideologies are generally discredited, except liberalism, I guess, a closed society needs to be based on a national or ethnic principle. To establish such a principle, you need an enemy. If you do not have one, you need to invent it. In the post-communist world, you don't need to go very far to find an enemy because communism generally neglected or oppressed national aspirations. Milosevic had provided the new paradigm. As the head of the Communist Party in Serbia, he decided to change horses, and he discovered that nationalism was a much more vigorous animal than communism. He became popular when he asserted the Serbian supremacy over Kosovo in a speech he delivered on April 24th, 1987 at Kosovo Polje. Events may have taken a different course if the economic reforms introduced by the federal Prime Minister Ante Markovic on January 1st, 1990, the same date as the Big Bang in Poland, bore fruit. At first, the stabilization program was even more successful than in Poland, but in the course of the Serbian elections, Milosevic raided the federal treasury and destroyed the stability of the currency.
That's a pot calling the kettle black.
Right there. Absolutely. It takes one to know one, I guess. From then on,
game recognizes game.
From then on, he set the agenda. The Western powers in the international community were committed a number of egregious errors in dealing with the Yugoslav situation, but in retrospect, it is clear that the disintegration of Yugoslavia would have been difficult to prevent even if the Western powers had done everything right. The ease with which... Yep.
Oh, jeez. You just had to wait a few years till 1999. You know?
It was all just a self-propelled tragedy. We had nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Didn't do nothing.
The ease with which Milosevic destroyed the economic reforms instituted by Markovic proves the point. Open society is a delicate construct which is easier to destroy than to develop.
So the sanctions against Serbia, that didn't do anything, though.
It had nothing to do with it. The vultures circling upon the fall of the Iron Curtain had nothing to do with this. This was just a self-propelled operation of
Yeah.
Milosevic looting the treasury that just imploded Yugoslavia.
Yeah, the thing is he knows all of this is these are just partial truths strung along.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll
Yeah.
tell you about, yes, the pillaging of the treasury, but he won't tell you about the sanctions. He won't tell you about any other context surrounding it, which is the best part, I suppose.
Well, even what happened with the Yugoslav army and its pillaging. You know.
But
fuck.
he'll go further into it. Don't worry. So I'll just continue
All
on
right.
with
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. This is great, man. This is like real history right here.
Oh, absolutely.
This
This conceptual framework seems to provide a fairly accurate diagnosis of the situation. The trend is set in the direction of nationalist dictatorships and/or economic collapse, with the rise of nationalism hastening the economic breakdown, and the breakdown eventually leading to the rise of military strongman espousing nationalistic principles. The sequence of events is not inevitable, but it would require resolute action to avoid it.
Well, and unless like the liberal world order goes through a massive strategic economic retraction,
never,
like 2008
never
never happened. No, 2008 never could happen. Stagflation never happening. Like it's again, like there's, when you look at again, like I say, I'm not a China-phile or whatever, but it's not just China. There's many examples of like command and control societies that have had a modicum of, now granted if they manage to avoid sanctions by Western powers, have had a modicum of economic growth. But this theory that, well, when you get a dictator and you get a controlled society and nationalism, then it just all goes to shit and people are in breadlines and eventually they're going to have to come to the West for economic aid and we're going to have to implement our fucking Washington consensus neoliberal policies and it's all going to be better. Like, it's very strange. Not strange, it's very brilliant in a way. How Soros is managing to appeal to, like, the Fox News conservatard, the contard, and the fucking shitlib in the same breath.
Yeah. Because they're both tenants. They're both tenants of belief for each.
Yeah. Like, you remember, like, when we beat the Austrian painter and, our identity is instantiated in, like, the post-war era. And then he goes to the liberals. He's like, don't you know that those evil, nasty fascist dictators that, the best way to ensure that we're going to have pride parades and liberalization of everything.
Golden Arches theory.
Economic prosperity will lead to the dissolution of all those authoritarian regimes that you hate, whether it be religion or political dictatorships or fascism. If and it's funny because people nowadays, like the Hanania, Ezra Klein types, they say the same thing. If you want to beat the chuds, the right-wing chuds, if you want to beat the fucking trad cottagecore back to the landers and whatever like phantasm of evil fascism lurking in the corner, then you just have to give people enough economic prosperity. And it'll work.
And it's amazing when he's describing the West, he's always describing that the core principle that unifies the West is money.
Yes.
Whether he likes it or not. That's the core principle. That's the reason for you have these institutions. It's open because only openness can give you prosperity, etc., etc.
Can't
right?
we all just come together and worship Mammon? That is the common plea.
Yeah. Absolutely, right? Everything that isn't this is authoritarianism.
Yeah. Anything that impedes GDP, it has to go because it's authoritarianism. It's a closed society, and it's frankly awful. Just ignore our sanctions. But to continue, Milosevic, in his own words, does not Milosevic on his own does not constitute a security threat to Europe or the rest of the world, but nationalist dictatorships do. That is the point that European statesmen who are set on appeasing Milosevic fail to understand. Already, Serbia has a worthy counterpart in Croatia. Croatian forces recently committed a massacre in a Bosnian village, provoking a retaliation by Bosnian Muslim forces. The effect is to force Bosnian Croats to flee from the area where they are a minority to areas held by Croat forces, thereby constituting a majority there. It is very tempting to appeal to nationalist emotions in order to divert attention from economic failure. Mitsiar is doing that now in Slovakia. Iliescu in Romania relies on extreme nationalists for his parliamentary majority. Antal in Hungary flirted with doing so. But paradoxically, when the economic disintegration is too advanced, it may be too late to mobilize society behind a national cause. That was certainly the case in Ukraine, where Kravchuk tried to play the nationalist card in connection to the Black Sea Fleet, but failed. It may also be true of Russia. If that is so, the danger of a nationalist dictatorship emerging in Russia, which is, after all, the most important country from a security point of view, will be the greatest after the economy has stabilized.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh!
Uh-oh.
Oh!
The man was clairvoyant.
They only got Putin. Imagine if they got somebody more hardcore. Yeah, they got softballed on that one, admittedly.
Yeah.
Is it possible to avert the danger? Is it still possible to avert the danger? But who is going to make the effort? That is where my conceptual framework fails to provide an answer. The so-called free world failed to rise to the challenge when it would have been possible to set in motion a trend towards an open society. Why should it do anything now when events are clearly going in the wrong direction and the free world has increasing problems of its own?
See, the thing that's ludicrous about this, right, is you can just install free societies. You can just make them over. It reminds me of Bush saying we're going to make Iraq a democracy, right? It disregards history. He does his theory of history is complete bullshit.
Oh, absolutely.
It's total bullshit.
It's couched in terms that ostensibly understand it, but once you get past that layer, it's falls apart completely.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like that's one thing you can give him over the Bushisms is that he pretends to understand history, but it ultimately, when push comes to shove, it's just isn't coherent. It's just as broken. I can continue on from need for collective security, or one of you could take over if you want.
I can do a paragraph or two.
Okay.
The need for collective security. We did not oppose the Soviet Union because it was a closed society, but because it posed a threat to our existence. The threat has now disappeared, and it is difficult to justify any kind of intervention, whether it is political, economic, or military, on the grounds of national self-interest. It is true that the danger of some kind of nuclear disaster remains, but it concerns the rest of the world at least as much as it concerns us. Therefore, the only basis for action is collective security, and that is where the problem lies. The collapse of the Soviet Union has created a collective security problem of the utmost gravity. Without a new world order, there will be a disaster. That much is clear. But who will act as the world's policeman? That is the question that needs to be answered. You won't believe the country that's mentioned in the next. you just you won't believe where it's going. The United States, as the remaining superpower, is weighed down by domestic difficulties, which derive at least partially from the burdens of being a superpower. We are
Hmm.
not like England in the 19th century, as the main beneficiary of the world trading system, could afford to maintain a fleet that could be sent to distant troubled spots. This is a discrepancy between the needs of the world for a new world order and the national self interest of the United States. The United States cannot be expected to act on its own. Can it act in concert with others?
Aren't you, Chud, so selfish that you're worried about your domestic concerns over the security of the world? Don't you know how selfish that is?
Yeah.
It's like fucking that one alt right documentary with Matt Christman, where he at the end he like says, when things get really bad, when the climate apocalypse happens, people are gonna choose genocide by closing the borders. It's like, fuck. We have so much wealth just spread around to everybody around the world. I can't believe it. Fuck, man. Um, Cannot be expected that someone can act in concert with others. Yeah, but it's not going so well. I don't know. It didn't go so well. It turns out that other nations don't really have the same, bloodlust for defeating either like what the Vietnamese or the Iranians or the Iraqis or the Russians or the Libyans or like on and on and on and on. So
Yeah. So
Hey, do you want to
he-
implode a country on a geopolitical hotspot because we don't like them?
this is a juicy paragraph. Let us take a look at Europe. Europe has responded to the Soviet collapse and the reunification of Germany by accelerating the integration of the European community. But the reunification of Germany created a dynamic disequilibrium in the European monetary system, and the attempt to establish a common European foreign policy came a cropper in Yugoslavia. As I have explained on on a different occasion, too, the Maastricht Treaty turned into a boom bust sequence, which is now self reinforcing in the negative direction. How far the process of disintegration will go is impossible to say, but it may go much further than currently anticipated unless resolute action is taken to reverse it. And this is from, written in New York. I mean, where else?
Yeah.
September 29th.
So that's the breaking. That's the break point. But there's another article attached to it.
Yes. Yeah.
So to continue with the second part of the article here, the United Nations might have become an effective organization if it were under the leadership of the two superpowers cooperating with each other. As it is, the United Nations has already failed as an institution, which could be put in charge of U.S. troops. Oh, look, it's all the '90s boomer conspiracy bait right there.
Yeah, I remember. Okay, it's so funny. I talked about this in my one episode of Content Minded. Brave. It's not Brave New World Revisited. Transnational Progressivism Revisited, where like the John Fonte essay. I think it's a good term still, but one of the big things was that the UN, in concert with quote unquote European socialists, that's like the typical like boomer conservative neocon line where it's like they're gonna tie a hand behind the back of us macho yeoman farmer Jeffersonian individualist Americans fighting the terrorists, right? And so that was the big obsession. But then at the same time, like I mentioned before, in the early '90s, you had this like world peace hippy dippy thing with the UN. You had like Siri Chinmoy going around and like blessing world peace sites and giving talks and meeting with leaders of the UN. Like the UN was going to be everything. It was going to deliver world peace. But then when you look at like sending random people from throughout the world to get shot at by Bosnians and Serbians and Haitians and Iraqis, then it's like
You forgot the Rwandans.
oh, the Rwandans, yeah. You're getting shot up by the Interhamwe, then it's like that's not going to work, and like it doesn't matter like all that stuff like when you're in Canada, like I mean this is before Goran's time, but like when I was a kid in Canada as a millennial, it was like a huge everywhere the romanticism because of Romeo Dallaire. Romeo Dallaire was everything. Like, like Rwanda, Romeo Dallaire, the UN, like that was like a huge part of like growing up in Canada. But then like Soros, that shit lasted. Like when I was a kid, when I was cogent enough, was like really like the late 90s, early 2000s. But Soros is saying this in 1993 that the UN was cooked. He was right. Because, like, what happened a year after? Well, Rwanda. Did they do anything? No. One of my mother's best friends was actually in the Peace Corps. And she went to Bosnia and Haiti and Iraq and Afghanistan. And even she admits it. Like, yeah, it was kind of bullshit. Because what we're going to do there? We can't shoot anybody. So what's the point? Just to observe, I guess. Maybe clear a few minds here and there.
Maybe
She was almost
some
blown
human
up by a bomb.
trafficking. That could be.
Yeah, or that, or that, like came out in the BBC in Bosnia, human trafficking. But so yeah, it seems that romanticism, that almost like new age. I'm actually reading an article from 1998 in Parabola magazine on my show that goes into the new millennium and the anticipation people had for it. But a lot of people still had that view of the UN. The UN was an incredibly powerful symbol. It almost crossed into like new age mythology that it would heal the world, but that never happened. And then you have all the stupid contoured conspiracy theories about the UN's gonna, and even Alex Jones back in the day had the thing that the UN's they're gonna have martial law, they're gonna have the 10 super states in a time of crisis, they're gonna have continuity of government through the UN. It's like, bro, America controls the UN. What the fuck are you talking about? Fuck. So,
no.
what are they going to do? Stop giving them checks?
Just because the United Nations is in New York does not imply any American primacy or supremacy over the organization.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's the European-style socialists and the globalists who are all conspiring from without Washington rather than within Washington.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The UN are going to put your sons in skirts. The UN are going to make your daughters into OnlyFans models. The UN are going to destroy your society. No, like that. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, yeah.
But to continue, because it's going to touch on these points in just a moment here, this leaves NATO as the only institution of collective security that has not failed, because it has not been tried. I wonder who the key player in NATO is that might, I don't know, might be the common factor here, but I digress. NATO has the potential of serving as the basis of a new world order in the part of the world in which is in most need of order and stability. But it can do so only if its mission is redefined. There is an urgent need for some profound new thinking with regards to NATO. The future of NATO. The original mission was to defend the free world against the Soviet Empire. Just ignore that NATO predated the Warsaw Pact by 6 years.
Yeah.
That
yeah.
Don't worry about that.
The Soviet Empire, like the people that lost 27 million in the Second World War, over 5 or 6 million in the war after the First World War.
Yeah.
The Civil War. Like where almost all the destruction happened was where they lived, but they were going to take over Western Europe. No, it wasn't like Stalin set up the Warsaw Pact as a buffer for a renewed attack. Like he didn't know.
Once again, 6 years after NATO was established.
That's right, 6 years after. Yeah, exactly. Like it is so dishonest.
Yes, the looming threat of the Soviet Empire. There's no direct threat from the region to the NATO countries. The dangers within the region, and its concerns conditions within states as much as relationships between states. Therefore, if NATO has any mission at all, it is to project power and influence into the region, and the mission is best defined in terms of open and closed society. So, once again, confirming what we've been saying ever since the start of this program, NATO is an occupation regime in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's the Soros vision. That's what's been carried out since, I would say, at least the late 1990s, if not before that. And I would argue that even during the Cold War, it was the occupation regime, just stretched further into Europe with the collapse of the Soviet bloc. But to continue, closed societies based on nationalist principles constitute a threat to security because they need an enemy, either outside or within.
That's the only reason they exist. They plucked this out of nowhere.
Unlike liberalism, unlike
liberalism that needs an exception to basically function.
Yeah.
Oh my god. No, we're just gonna redefine the enemy as internal as well.
That's right.
As the chuds, as the subversives, as the fascists, as this and that. That's the of the post-war order. We're just going to redefine the enemy as an internal, impenetrable force that you can use against Islamic terrorists, you can use against the Chuds, you can use against XYZ, against Russia.
Anyone who criticizes Israel.
Exactly. Anyone who criticizes the world order as it is today is a subversive, and by exclusion is constituted within the law by exclusion, right? You know, I've read enough Giorgio Agamben to understand this. You know what I mean? So like, not to be too like high up there, but like, you know, that's the thing. The redefinition of friend and enemy, that has been a very powerful motif.
Absolutely.
And so
only
like
closed
Soros
societies do that, though.
Exactly. No, but see, if you're an enemy of the open society by wanting a closed society, not necessarily are a closed society, although there's that too. There's Russia, there's China, there's Iran. But if you just desire a closed society, then technically,
Yes.
7-dimensionally, chess-wise, you are not part of that open society.
Is this when they get into the whole paradox of tolerance thing?
Exactly. Yeah.
The only way to maintain an open society is to behave like a closed society. So true.
Yeah.
But remember, closed societies have no merits and they need to be dismantled.
Except
for our open society.
Yeah. But see, the brilliance of it is that you will convince a lot of people of this, because if you tag the source of iniquity and animosity and nemesis on people's individual consciousness of what they believe in, rather than a totalizing ideology external to that society, that is a much better means of control society than in an open, quote unquote, open environment. Than if you say that the fucking, who is the enemy in 1984? The Asiatic, what were they called? The Asiatic powers.
It's so long ago. I don't know.
Was that when they were doing the Asian tiger thing? Or was that
in 1984?
You mean the novel? Yeah.
Oh, didn't you say 94? 84. Son of a bitch, I know this. But I know what you're getting at.
1980 enemy in the book. Fuck, it's gonna really Manuel Goldstein, the external enemy. Aren't they called like the Eurasian? Yeah, the East Asia, the Oceania. There you go,
Yeah.
Oceania. Yeah, it's like the externalization of an enemy can only get you so far. If you're dealing with a highly sophisticated digital communication-based society that's largely post-industrial, means of control must be met at the psychical level rather than as grand geopolitical nation states. Like even the way that, you know, Russia is or well, Iran's a bit different, but like the way that it's marketed as like the whole thing about like foreign subversion, like anytime
the Kremlin octopus is in charge of the far right across Europe and North America.
Exactly. Yeah. Because it infects you, it infects your psyche. And therefore you are a bodiless sleeper that must be rooted out from the open society rather than just the external enemy. It is at home that the, you know, Russian subversion or whatever must be meted out.
Yes, the Facebook ads and Tucker Carlson, all of that.
The podcasters, the panicans, you know, that's the way it works. Like the open society must be maintained by attacking the agents of the closed society from without. That's the ultimate guarantor. That is a very sophisticated way of power, as opposed to just saying this external enemy wants to, you know, I don't know, topple the world order or control the Strait of Hormuz or target you for whatever.
Or be anti-Semitic or I
don't
know.
Yeah, or be anti-Semitic. Like that's the way they did it with radical Islam as well. Not, you know, like, and then you had like Western emissaries who were, you know, like Adam Gadon, for example. They're like, you know, Adam Gadon could be your son one day. Like that. So we need to pass the Patriot Act. Like it's, you know, I mean.
Yes.
yeah, I hope I understand. I'm getting across like
No,
why Soros as a political architect is way more
But
effective to read
but notice
than
how
yeah.
he's doing his utmost here to like, yeah, the argument is how do we, and you're absolutely right, how do we root out the agents of closed societies that keep popping up in open societies, right?
Yeah.
um he ignores a kind of civilizational ontology. For instance, he will never address how did the West get to the point that it's
Right.
become so money, like it's obsessed with money and technology. All the other attributes of culture found in earlier, younger stages of a civilization are never even hinted at, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they don't even exist. It's state organization, prosperity. You give people the freedom because of course,
Maybe the culture industry. Yeah.
right. But the culture itself is not high culture. It is not.
Exactly. Yeah.
It is extremely low culture, right? And he never mentions this, right? And he can't afford to mention it. Now, I think he's smart enough to understand it's there, but do we want to go back to the Crusades in the 100-Year War? Like
yeah. 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 Yeah.
that's how he
Yeah.
would bring it up. But I mean, I just find it funny how he skirts around this, and in a way, this is what the West has been doing. The West, in so much as fighting other authoritarian governments, it's actually fighting with its past.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%. And notice how like these huge cultural institutions, like I was even there's this art critic. The show is called Scorned by Muses, where at the end he was talking about like Trump giving money to this like atelier where it's like classical realism bullshit. But he said like at the same time, like the professional art world is more irrelevant in the public consciousness than ever. So what are they doing? They're trying to appeal with these art installations to like Silicon Valley people with money. But these Silicon Valley people with money, they're infamously tasteless bores that have
Yeah.
no artistic or aesthetic
Well,
vision whatsoever.
the,
You
the
know?
the the 20th century art project was the critique of every art form that preceded it. It killed it, it sterilized it, and then now it has no function anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Like, did you see like even recently, like the this year's Venice Biennale? It was boring. It was like apart from that Anish Kapoor piece, like no, like nobody. You have to be a very particular person now to keep up with the contemporary art world.
Well, there's only one solution for all of this. I hope you know.
Mm.
We need to fund Stalinist architecture.
Well, yeah, that's supposedly what Trump wants to do, right? With his, classical architecture kick. But it's a ghost dance.
That sounds
fucking ghost dance.
That sounds awfully close to a closed society. I'm not comfortable with that.
No, but see, it's to revive the American.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So to
It's
continue,
not really a closed society.
to continue, because I think this little aside here was good preempting of the rest of the article. So,
Oh yeah.
closed societies based on nationalist principles constitute a threat to security because they need an enemy either outside or within. But the threat is very different in character from the one that NATO was constructed to confront. Yes, the threat that NATO preemptively confronted, and a very different approach is required to combat this threat. It involves the building of democratic states and open societies and embedding them in a structure which precludes certain kinds of behavior. Only in the case of failure does the prospect of military intervention arise, and there it is. The constructive open society building part of the mission is all the more important because the prospect of NATO members intervening militarily in the troubled part of the world is very remote. Bosnia is ample proof. If only he just waited a few years.
Yeah.
He just had to wait a few years. Yeah.
10 years.
So we're towards the tail end of this. I don't know if anyone wants to take this little subsection for Partnership for Peace.
I'll do it.
All right. Yeah.
Okay, Partnership for Peace as proposed. Peace as proposed. Unfortunately, the American proposal for the forthcoming NATO summit, the so-called Partnership for Peace, does not deal with this issue at all. It is a very narrow technical proposal for holding common exercises and otherwise preparing for possible future cooperation with member countries of the former Warsaw Pact. The scope of the possible future cooperation is described as peacekeeping, crisis management, search and rescue missions, and disaster relief. While useful as while useful as far as it goes, it fails to address the conflicting security needs of the countries concerned. He's like, he thinks NATO doesn't know that if
Yeah.
economic prosperity ever returns to Russia, and there'll be a nationalist leader, it could be anyways. I just the countries of Central Europe are clamoring for full membership of NATO as soon as possible, preferably before Russia recovers. So what do you
No,
know?
oh, wait, no, that one.
Yeah, Russia
Oh,
objects not because it harbors any designs in its former empire. That's honest.
that's honest.
But because it sees no advantage in consenting. Its
Why
national
would
pride,
they?
yeah, its national pride has been hurt, and it is sick and tired of making concessions without corresponding benefits.
Imagine that.
Holy
Uh,
fuck.
he can be very honest. The
Yeah.
Partnership for Peace, far from being the product of profound new thinking, is a rather superficial attempt to paper over the differences by making an overture to all the former members of the Warsaw Pact indiscriminately, while leaving the prospect of some countries joining NATO deliberately vague. It may end up engendering more conflicts than it resolves.
As if that's not
He's
the
right.
intent.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. Holy fuck.
I'll read one more paragraph and then you can take over, Gio.
Yeah, yeah.
This is a great pity because the conflicts could be easily avoided
I'm
if
sorry,
the
could you say
real
that first line in the Soros voice? That warrants it.
This is a great pity.
this is a great pity because the conflicts could be easily avoided if the real needs of the region were addressed. The primary need is for constructive engagement in the transition to democratic market oriented. Oh yeah,
Oh,
I'm surprised he didn't capitalize market oriented open societies. This requires an association or alliance which goes far beyond military matters and contains a significant element of economic assistance. Both the military and the economic aspects of the alliance have to relate to internal political developments
Wow.
within states as much as to relationships between states, because peace and security in the region depend first and foremost on a successful transition to open
you
society.
have to drop trow right away. All of your society has to drop trow.
Now, basically, what he's saying, and Jeffrey Sachs sort of says the same thing.
Yeah.
That is, he pressed for an economic model to be applied to Russia as the one that was applied to Poland, and he, like Soros, is convinced that if that had happened, these conflicts wouldn't have happened, right? But I think there's only two reasons why the elites above these guys didn't go along with it. And one is, okay, so with a country like Ukraine, it's so corrupt that whatever you pour into it, like
It's a total black hole.
it's a total black hole, right? So where is it going to go? It's not going to be a foe. Obviously, you don't have to worry about that. And they'll be eager for some kind of businesses, but they'll want to cut. On the other hand, with Russia, you could argue the same thing. However, the assistance will only go so far. So they don't trust Russia. They don't trust Russia's strength. And the other theory besides this is, yeah, okay, we did that, and they'll comply because remember, Russia used to pay BP to to um, to pump oil out of the ground during the 90s before Putin nationalized it, right?
This is before Gazprom. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is like this is one of the reasons that were infuriated the British, along with like some other stuff that was mostly Rothschild owned. So, anyways, what they were sad about was, well, we should get an even bigger cut, right? And they couldn't reform Russia the way they reformed Poland because Russia and Poland are apples to oranges. Like they're not comparable countries, and just to begin with, like the nuclear arsenal. the fact that Russia has been just a more let's say
It's more of a main character in world history.
yes, and
Yeah.
whether you're talking about literature or film or religion, it's just played
Geopolitics. Yeah.
geopolitics. It's just played a much bigger role, and it has nukes.
Yeah.
So you can
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
start a
Um,
real partnership, a real
a real
partnership.
partnership for peace. We're gonna go around and sing "We Are the World." The mission of this new kind of alliance is so radically different from that of the original mission of NATO, so it cannot be entrusted to NATO itself. If it were, it would change NATO out of all. It would change NATO out of all recognition. Interesting. A different kind of organization is needed, and the proposed partnership for peace could be the organization. PPP, PFP, PFP server. That's what the world will come. The world will resemble a PFP server. Um, the Partnership for Peace would not contain any of the automatic guarantees which have given NATO its clout. Well, I mean, is there really any automatic guarantees with NATO? I don't know. In the current unstable conditions, that would be unthinkable. Its main task would be to help with the process of transformation into open societies. For that purpose, it must lay the emphasis on the political and economic aspects of the transformation. In order to have any clout at all, the Partnership for Peace must have a structure and a budget. This is what NATO could bring to the table. NATO has a unified command structure which brings together the United States and Western Europe. These are great advantages in having such a strong Western pillar. It leads to a lopsided structure firmly rooted in the West. This is as it should be, since the goal is to reinforce and gratify the desire of the region for joining the open society of the West. Um, they're making the last film. They say it's the best, and we all help make it. It's called The Death of the West. The kids from Shame will all be there. Free Coca-Cola for you. It's a Death in June song, Death of the West. It would be an express condition of membership in the Partnership for Peace that NATO is free to invite any member country to join NATO. This would fuck. This would avoid any conflict that could rise either from the enlargement of NATO against the wishes of Russia or from giving Russia veto over NATO membership.
You don't say.
Oh, jeez. The specter of the past looms large. One must avoid the suspicion of either a new cordon sanitaire or a new Yalta. A partnership. Oh, yeah. Americans in, Russian down, Germany down, Russia out.
Yeah.
A partnership for peace along the lines outlined here would avoid both suspicions. It must be attractive enough to induce Russia to subscribe. If it does, there's nothing to prevent countries like Poland, Czech Republic, and Hungary from being admitted to some form of membership in NATO.
I wonder if there's a country left out there that might be pivotal question there.
Yeah, he
There's a
doesn't
last
mention it.
straw country.
I don't know, maybe a giant question mark perhaps looming in the air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Slovakia.
Must be Slovakia.
Slovenia.
Oh,
Yeah,
who-
That was actually true at this time in the 90s. It was Slovenia.
Yeah.
The character of which would depend on the internal development. The budget of the Partnership for Peace must come out of the NATO budget. There must be some elements of the military-industrial complex that may object to such a reallocation of resources, and they have a strong argument in their favor. If nothing is done, yeah, they're gonna have like the globe symbol on their fucking camo. Just with Slavic and all those fucking other like unironic neoliberal shits want. They want the fucking globe thing on a military patch.
I'll take another 10 Macron vaporwave edits, please.
Yeah. There's like the libtard version, which is like Slavic and all those people. And then who's that other guy? He's like a self-hating Serb on Twitter.
Oh,
And he,
what?
You know that guy, right?
I know the guy, but
Stupid fucking haircut.
I try to ignore these people, but I know
Yeah.
exactly who you're talking about.
Surge something.
And then there's the Bulgarian one, the Makita guy. Not
Oh,
Bulgarian,
God.
Belarusian, even worse.
Oh, even worse.
Yeah, and
Even
like he
worse.
uses like the fake color revolution flag, and that's his entire identity.
Oh my God. Harden your heart, oh Lukashenko. So you have that side. Then you have like the Jupiterian NATO wave people. So a more than proportional reduction in defense budget can be sustained. It is on this issue that political leadership must be brought to bear. There is a clear and present danger to our collective security. The Yugoslav experience has shown that military intervention is not a viable option.
Just you wait 3 years.
Just wait. Therefore, the only way to deal with it is by constructive engagement, including economic aid. But economic aid does cost money, and the money can only be found in the defense budgets. Well, they'll work out some things with intelligence agencies. It should still produce a net reduction in defense expenditures. The countries of Europe must bear a large share of the cost and have a correspondingly large say in NATO. Economic aid to Eastern Europe would provide a much-needed stimulus to the depressed European economies. Not when you're going to war. The fact that the present command structure of NATO is too lopsided for the United States. Oh, this is the boomer con fan, worst nightmare. George Soros saying this. Is too lopsided in favor of the United States is well recognized by all parties. Making NATO the pillar of the Partnership for Peace would hasten the process of adjustment. Specifically, it should induce France to re-enter as a full member. That would serve as the test of the structure of international reorganization. Yeah, the French NATO military, the EU military. There is only one deficiency in this design. Uh-oh. It leaves Japan out of account.
Uh-oh.
Japan should be asking to join NATO. Then we would fuck. North Atlantic.
Just when you think he didn't read, he hasn't read
Then we would have the beginnings of architecture for New World Order. A New World Order.
Oh, that's that phrase
again. Japan is really, fucking Yukio Mishima rolling in his grave. It is based on the United States as the remaining superpower and an open society as the organizing principle. He just comes and says it. Like, he just says it.
Yeah.
The United States has to be the only superpower. That's the only way we're going to have the open society. It consists of a series of alliances. You know what's funny is that you have like the new like MAGA neocons like Will Chamberlain. They also say the same thing as Ezra Klein.
Yeah.
They also say the same thing. America has to be the only superpower. Anyways.
Can't let the Chi-Coms take over.
It consists of a series of alliances, the most important of which is NATO. And through NATO, the Partnership for Peace, which girds the Northern Hemisphere. The United States would not be called upon to act as the policeman of the world. When it acts, it would act in conjunction with others. Incidentally, the combination of manpower from Eastern Europe with oh my God.
Oh, manpower from Eastern Europe. I wonder if there's any greater plot there.
Mm-hmm.
With the technical capabilities of NATO would greatly enhance the military potential of the partnership because it would reduce the risk of body bags for NATO countries.
Hey, it's what Aristovich said. Right there. Plain as day.
Oh my God.
I don't get it. If they're going to fill up NATO and they're going to die for NATO, why are they not NATO body bags?
It's different because it's not British, French, and American.
Exactly.
They'll care less when it's the Poles and the Romanians doing it. And of course the Ukrainians who aren't even in NATO.
Yeah.
That guy Chamberlain. Is it true? He turned out to be actually?
I don't know. Maybe. Is he?
I mean,
I thought I
know.
saw a tweet. I thought I saw a tweet where he said he was actually I'm half Jewish. It's like, well, everything
Could
makes
be a
sense now.
troll. It could be a troll. Like there's people
Could
around
be.
him that do that.
hey, who are we to doubt the man about his own heritage?
Yeah.
Yeah. The United States partnership because it would reduce the risk of body bags for NATO countries, which is the main constraint of their willingness to act. This is a viable alternative to looming world disorder. So, okay, so you're not willing to fight for your own new world order, so you're gonna have to get fucking Eastern Europeans to do it because you have a different relationship to life and death than they do. I'm assuming. It's like
Mhm.
it's such a like when you think about it, it's such a fucking gutless piece of shit move. But that's exactly what we're seeing.
Hey, Ukraine, remember Bandera? Hey, Poland, remember 1610? It's funny enough. In order to fight these wars, he needs to build these close societies that are willing to.
You're gonna go to the meat grinder.
Yeah, it's a suicide charge against Russia.
Yeah.
He isn't saying it, but he's thinking. But he's also in this formulation. I'm assuming Russia is part of this. Now,
Yeah.
who are they fighting at this point?
The Chinese, I don't know.
But the Chinese, 93.
No. Who are
Like,
they fighting against?
Who are they fighting against? I guess it really is a new world order. Anyways, like what? The Sunni Muslims? Ooh,
No, the
scary.
American militia movement.
I-
You know,
I-
they're gonna fight Timothy McVeigh and
McVeigh is
David Koresh.
the greatest threat to America I've seen my whole life.
Wait, so Soros' plan was to ship in Azov guys to fight the prepper schizos? That's amazing. I had this guy all wrong. That would have been something to see.
That would have been great. Can you imagine? You have like the Arizona militia against Azov battalion. Oh my god. That's real alt history. That's like some Hoi 4 video game.
And Gunther would probably lose that one too.
Who do you side? Well, he'd side with Azov, obviously.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but he would still lose.
I love it. That would like force like all of the like, you know, that would like force like the American neocons to pick sides. Like they're like, oh, I don't know. Like it's. I know I used to say like gamer words in Twitter Spaces, but you know I'm kind of cross now. So. Oh fuck. Anyways, problems of economic assistance. It should be recognized that providing economic assistance to the former Soviet Union would be an unmitigated failure. I like to divide the history of Western assistance into 3 phases. First, when the Western assistance should have been promised but was not. Second, when it was promised but it was not delivered. And third, when it was delivered but it does not work. We are now entering the 3rd phase. One of the reasons for the failure is that each donor country is acting on its own and is guided by its own interests and not that of the recipients. In my foundation, we describe Western assistance to formerly communist countries as the last bastion of the command economy. That may be unavoidable, but at least there ought to be unified command. In this respect, NATO offers a better culture than the European Commission, which has put in charge of coordinating economic assistance. The G7 ought to have developed a command structure for dealing with economic aid to the former Soviet Union, but did not. There is a much to be gained from giving the task to Partnership for Peace. For one thing, it would put the emphasis on conflict prevention rather than on intervention. For another, it would put the economic cost in the context of the gain in security. Incidentally, it would also focus attention on the constituency in the former Soviet Union, which is the most important from a security point of view, namely the military. Before they looted it. In current economic conditions, even very small expenditures benefit the military would be a major effect on their attitudes and behaviors. Do you think Victor Boot ever met George Soros?
It's not unlikely.
It's not impossible. Yeah. A strong case can be made that economic assistance to Russia and the other newly independent states is justified only in the context of a partnership for peace. So basically, America goes in there and dictates everything. If my earlier analysis is correct, the danger of nationalist dictatorships arising is the greatest after the economy is stabilized. It is imperative to create a structure that obviates this danger. Yes, as soon as people no longer are worried about starving, they want to go back to their way of life and their traditions, which he, is assuming is a closed society dictatorship. So that's
he's really
terrible.
schwitzing now. I can. It's been 30 some years, but I can feel it all the way, 33 years in the future.
This is not good for his people.
No, it's terrible. You could relate it to certain historical tribulations they've undergone, so to speak. I won't say which ones, but you could probably.
Yeah, but economic prosperity is the key to them just giving up their whole way of life. So,
Give them money. Money is the only weapon we have.
Money. Yeah, the golden arches theory of world history. Who wants to take over?
I think this is the last leg of the article, which GSP, if you want to, you can.
No, I can read it. It's the last bit. Yeah, sorry. Economic cooperation. The multilateral structure of partnership would be particularly useful in reestablishing economic ties among the member countries of the former Soviet Union. This is an urgent need for some kind of economic union because the Soviet economy was totally centralized with very little redundancy built into the system, and as if lifelines are cut, individual countries bled to death, as the example of Ukraine demonstrates. Interesting. That wasn't actually true. There was plenty of stringencies that went unnoticed in the provinces. Moscow couldn't account for every penny. No.
Well, don't count on a source to tell you that.
Yeah, but I mean, the Brezhnev's Russia was different.
What was wonderful?
Stalin's Russia. It was great. It was great.
You too will long for the Brezhnev era in due time.
You know what? I want
to
get some ironic T-shirts, like one with Brezhnev. You know, the one where he's on a boat and he's wearing sunglasses. he is so living his best life.
Well, maybe a British man of a certain persuasion can harass you on the streets of Odessa over that.
Yeah.
I like how they vindicated that man's
with
worldview.
his Asian rent boy.
Yeah, they vindicated his entire worldview in just that one interaction.
Oh my god! I like the photo of Brezhnev where he's with his shirt off answering the phone. That's aura farming right there.
Oh yeah, that's wonderful. You ever hear that anecdote about him joyriding Nixon's car?
No.
Yeah.
No. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Stop making him love him even more.
I thought I could only like him a certain point. Yeah.
My favorite tartar. Anyways, go on.
Oh my god.
Should we relitigate his comments to Margaret Thatcher now, or
yeah, that's what
yeah. But the newly independent states just justifiably fear the prospect of renewed dominance by Moscow and Western participation. Could allay their fears. Perhaps the greatest accomplishment of the Marshall Plan was that it was fostered European cooperation. The need for cooperation among the formerly communist countries is even greater than it was in post-war Europe. It is in field that the Partnership of Peace could make its greatest contribution to security. But the reform and reconstruction of economic ties among the formerly communist countries should not be pursued at the expense of their integration into the European economy. Countries like Hungary have almost completely broken their dependence on the Soviet market. They need better access to European markets more than any other form of economic assistance. By allowing differential treatment, including membership in the European Union and NATO, the Partnership for Peace should help fulfill this aspiration. Conclusion: I realize that the mood in NATO member countries is not favorable for this kind of radical new departure I advocate, but at least the need for it's recognized. Otherwise, the paltry measures offered by the U.S. administration would not have been named Partnership for Peace. I am convinced that the kind of partnership for peace I outlined here is feasible. It would be welcomed by both Russia and the other newly independent states, as well as the countries of Central Europe. It would be far cheaper than allowing the incipient world disorder to develop unhindered.
Please, Yeltsin, prostitute out Russia even more.
Yeah, we have to stop multipolarity in its tracks. It would change the course of history for the better. There is little time left between the January NATO summit and President Clinton's visit to Moscow. Nevertheless, I hope my proposal will receive serious consideration. Well, I guess it was.
That's George Soros in his own words from 1993.
Oh man.
Very interesting. Some very salient points. Some cloaking
Nah.
of other factors in trying to diagnose or understand the situation in Europe.
Well, I know I teased it for far too long and that we should have done this years ago, but right there, if you just read a little bit in the subtext, that's your explanation for the Ukraine war.
Yeah. It really does predict everything.
I mean, who knows why? Again, not to take the side of the neocons, but they would never have. I mean, I think here Soros is being genuinely naive. He thinks if you offer the Russians, and this is where he does not understand civilization. This is where he misunderstands it. He thinks if you offer them enough money, if you make them prosperous enough, they won't give you trouble, right? What he doesn't understand is, again, there's no Eastern European country remotely like Russia. It is on to use a Spenglerian model. It's on a course that none of these other countries are on. It is the only country in Europe, apart from those that we associate with the West, that is on this path, visibly on this path. And in many ways, the American elites may not be able to articulate it this way, but they intuitively understand it. He doesn't. He just thinks this is another much bigger goy crop that can be that can be
another
manipulated.
backwards shithole to exploit.
That can be bought off.
Excellent, more cattle.
Yeah. But Russia's not Poland. It's not Ukraine. It's not Croatia. It's not Czech Republic. It's not Romania. It's nothing like those countries, and it's on a very different path. And I'm sure the American elites are thinking, we're thinking like, wow, they lost so many millions, and they're still like going on about, preserving something of their because they have a destiny, right? It doesn't mean that destiny can't be stopped. It doesn't mean that at all. You could say the same thing about, let's say, the Aztecs. It can be stopped. It can be stopped. Short of some kind of an intervention like that, it probably won't be stopped. And so, so he is actually naive about that, about Russia, and this is why the West dealt such a heavy hand against Russia. Part of it was to get even for, I don't know, winning with them World War II.
And all the other centuries of ethnic grievances that the American ruling class probably carried over from the old country, so to speak.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Particularly Jews.
Yeah, yes, that's exactly what I'm getting at. But hey, you're excusing Brzezinski.
There's other ones.
You're excusing Brzezinski far too much for my taste there. But in all seriousness, I do agree with you that Soros does have that genuine blind spot because of his ideology that the Russians can simply be bought, like the Czechs, like the Poles, like the Romanians, like at least his assessment, the Hungarians, even though Orban was a bit of a I guess, wrench in that, but we could discuss that another time. But, yeah, I do agree that there was a disconnect between the overall American ruling class and Soros in that regard, where the American ruling class, even if they didn't have the words for it, they did see the machine that kept chugging along even after the devastating losses in World War II, both in terms of manpower, destruction of infrastructure and economic resources, and everything else that goes into that. Versus Soros, who thinks that, once again, if we just dump enough money and market access on you, the open society will spring out of the ground like oil.
Yeah, and prosperity is a property that you can buy and sell and extract and
short
ship
the
throughout
market on and make a
world.
fortune on.
Yeah,
All the
yeah.
Soros economic tactics, every one of them.
Exactly. Like even the human capital itself can be exploited. Like
But I will leave the
yeah.
link to that for those who want to read it for themselves or reread it or look further into that, because I think over these years I have simplified it, and that's just the nature of mentioning it in passing. But it's worth reading and rereading and reading a few more times just to get a full grasp, because I think even if, and I imagine if you're listening to this program, you obviously disagree with a lot of Soros's worldview and conclusions, there's a lot of good information to work with to analyze there.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But I suppose unless you guys had any further comments on that, we could round out with just this Thomas Massey debacle.
I don't know, it's
Yeah,
getting
yeah, why
kind of
don't we?
late unless you want to.
Yeah.
I don't know, just like the last 10 minutes here, round out like in
All
3
right, yeah.
hours.
No, he lost because he called Trump a PDF file. That's why he lost. Yeah. Fuck. It's just,
I can't believe the people who like the people that are too young to support some adversary of Massey. I like it's just. I mean, I kind of lost faith in the American right probably over 4 or 5 years ago.
Cue up that Ezra Pound quote. Where is it?
America's an insane asylum. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything I've said before in the past, like I think it gets. I'm exonerated. Let's just say that. I don't know what to say. Like I remember in one chat, I'm talking with this guy and with everybody, but I said, how could anyone, how could, after everything we've seen, how could anyone vote against Massey? How could any red-blooded American vote against Massey? And this guy responded with, it was only in Kentucky. I'm going are you serious? That's your excuse? It was only people in Kentucky could vote. Oh, I see.
Changes everything.
I mean, wouldn't that give even more impetus to vote for him? It was deranged.
The amount of deranged hatred that a lot of these E-right figures had towards Massey was incredible. Like he really just pissed them off for some reason.
I remember talking in the same chat with somebody about we've discussed on the channel how essentially the British tricked the Russians into continuing the war, which they wanted to leave World War I, that is, by promising them Constantinople, and that was the whole reason why the British sent all those Australians to their deaths in Gallipoli.
Yeah, Gallipoli, yeah.
But he said, well, that was an important trade route for the British. I'm thinking they had the largest empire the world had seen at that point. They couldn't find it anywhere else. The excuses are because he's Orthodox. He's an Orthodox convert, and it's the tendencies are still there. It's just absurd. So that's the way I look at the whole situation with Massey.
No, I agree.
It's all predicated on Epstein minting to save Trump. That's the whole impetus.
Yeah.
That's why they hate him so much.
Yes.
So it's also the anti-Zionist thing. Oh, he never talked about it before. He only mentioned Epstein a few times. Okay, so you're castigating him for mentioning it, even though Trump initially, or people around Trump, fucking Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, everyone in the MAGA coalition not you, right? Notice how like they use the phrase like Massey lost because of podcasters. You're a fucking podcaster. We all are. Okay, don't bullshit me. We all are. Okay, don't give me this bullshit about podcasters. You're a podcaster. I'm a podcaster. Candace Owens a podcaster.
We're all the podcasting cabal, and we make we're the reason that MAGA 2.0 is a failure, even though they'll insist it's a great success and that Donald Trump is making all the right decisions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly. So the podcasters is why Massey lost, but everyone's a take seller, everyone's a podcaster. So MAGA started off, not you on the ground, some of you, and some of them still are sticking to their guns, people with more, moral principles. But initially, the Epstein, Mr. Jeffries files was billeted by a lot of the MAGA faithful that maybe Trump should have told them, like, don't make so much hay out of it because, hey, I might be in there too. Or even if he's not, like, doing the whole PDF file thing, like, he certainly knew Epstein, obviously. Now, I'm not saying, like, I'm not accusing Trump of anything. Some people say that he knew him, but he wasn't involved that much. Other people differ. It's hard to say. Point being, in terms of official MAGA-dom, like Bongino, Bondi, Kash Patel, people in the administration, people that may have been left or whatever, they had a Epstein maximalist position that we're gonna release the files, all Democrats are PDF files, blah, 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 right? But then when it wasn't convenient, then it switches to Epstein minting, then it switches to this, like, fake pretense to political pragmatism. I'm going to be like, just like a Fox News pundit. It's like, okay, don't blame Massey for that. Don't say that Massey was the sole owner of the Epstein file issue. When people very close to Trump, who helped get Trump elected.
Yes.
When Trump himself said it in 2024.
Trump himself. Exactly. So this whole thing about you're a crazy conspiracy theorist and this is a distraction and this is to get at Trump and you're a traitor. Massey's a backstabber. Massey's this, Massey's that. It's like, I'm just, okay, did he go against Trump? Like that's some kind of, you're going against the imperial, you're going against the imperium there, right? Like, it's like, okay, fine. But the problem is you're ignoring the infrastructure that was put in place to make sure that Thomas Massey was never going to win. People in group chats. And I'm like, okay, do you ignore that all these organizations like AIPAC and whoever, that they spent millions of dollars into getting Massey toppled? I'm like, no, I can't. But the Massey took money from this other billionaire of a certain identity.
Just AIPAC spent $15.5 million.
Yeah. Oh, but Massey was soft on immigration. But that's not true, according to his voting record.
I mean, even assuming that's true, they want me to expect that GOP suit, whatever else, would be an immigration hawk. Like, and when Trump himself is backpedaling the immigration issue, and you want to criticize Massey for that, whatever truth there is, it's not relevant at that point.
Yeah. No, it's all vibes. That's the problem. It's trying to convince you that reality is what they say. That Trump is 100% perfect on all these issues, and Massey went for the king and he missed and he suffered for it.
And we're all panicking if we disagree.
Yeah. Yeah. But when Trump waffles in immigration, then that's fine.
Yeah, that's
so
because we need to pass the SAVE Act, which is never going to get passed, it seems. And
yeah, no, that's what I mean. Like it's trying to rewrite things. Now, could Massey have run a better campaign? Maybe, yes. Is Massey like a fuddy-duddy libertarian? Yes. But you have to realize, like, back before 2024, there was a genuine fight for the narrative on the Epstein files. there was a lot of like Q boomers and MAGA people that was their thing. And what happens? They, like I said this a few months ago on the show, they basically just give it all to the political left. And now you have like retarded liberal narratives about Jeffrey Epstein is only like a conservative influencer.
Well, he's an agent of Putin. That's
Yeah, or an agent of Putin. Yeah. So you've given up one of the biggest gifts possible to the right-wing conspiracy movement in America. You've essentially kicked it to the political left. And now you have to cope in you have to like go and proceed with a line of cope that you've punted that issue away. Because, and the thing is too, and one last thing I'll say, the whole like appeal to political pragmatism, I'm sorry, we don't live in that world anymore. MAGA back in 2016 told all of you that we don't live in that world anymore. That this appeal to like, you have to be like sober minded and realpolitik, you have to be presentable. What was the promise of Trump? To throw out that fake sincerity, to throw out that fake decorum, to topple the cart on the insincerity of the pundit class and of the political class. And now you're going to tell me that you're not going to entertain things like don't even talk about the cheese pizza shit. Just go to the fucking Whitney Webb narrative of like it reveals to you how blackmail and global power and how elites think. Bracket all of the elite cheese pizza related things. Just that alone is worth looking into. So you're going to tell me that for years, MAGA has been about political flights of imagination and dalliances away from the suffocating and oppressive mainstream forms of discourse. You're going to go back on that and say that, well, in order to protect Trump or what you think is protecting Trump, that you're going to go and say, no, we're actually going to narrow our speculation because we don't want to sound like we're crazy. But it's like, to quote Trump back in 2017, or was it 2016? The interview. What, you think it's going to make the world a more, the world's an angry place. What's it going to do? It's going to add a little more anger? The world's a crazy, America's an open air insane asylum. The America's a crazy place. What's it going to do? Add a bit more craziness? Okay, end of rant. Just getting late.
That's all very good stuff. That's the kind of note I want to end my show on. If either of you have final comments, now's the time. Otherwise, I'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say we didn't have time to get into the whole Dugin thing. Dugin.
Fuck yeah.
It's okay. It's late. I will say that Laura Loomer is now very upset. Laura Loomer is very upset.
Her tires, protect the tires.
Candace Owens is going to who's part of the woke Reich. Get it, Reich.
The woke Reich.
Thank you, Mr. Levin. I applaud you for that one.
So the arc has been the two endpoints of touch, Richard Spencer and Laura Loomer on the same side.
Imagine.
Whoa.
That. Like I just think that whole thing was funny because Dugin hurt a lot of people's feelings, but he didn't tell any lies. And when Spencer retaliated by quote tweeting Dugin saying something like, "How's your daughter doing?" Like this is what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Like if anything, Dugin was too patient for too long.
He actually said that, Spencer?
Yeah, he did.
Oh my god.
How's your ex-wife?
Yeah.
Well, he's got another kid on the way though, so it's all right.
How many kids does this guy have with how many women?
Spencer, I think he's got 4 kids now.
Yeah, I think from 2 or 3 different women now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I just thought like, yeah, maybe he didn't say it. I mean, I don't think he was being he wasn't wrong about his assessment of the West. But particularly as what this war has shown. Um, you know, he said some things that were hurtful. Yeah, I can see that. The West shouldn't should no longer, it doesn't deserve to exist. Well, in its
He
current
did say some crazy things, man. He went off the cob. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, in its
Uh,
current, like when Westoids hear that, they think like, I don't know, they think they're still producing Beethovens or Bachs. They think like none of that is going on. Okay, that's not what Dugan is talking about. He's talking about your current narcissistic inc, um, incarnation. Like that's what has to die. It's just like everybody knows this. Any right winger in the West knows this. There has to be a completely different reformulation, like not what is happening now. That's why I fundamentally agree with them, even though I understand why it was hurtful to so many Westoids. But when Spencer retaliated with like how that to me encapsulates everything.
yeah.
The fact that all of them forget like what they did to him, right? Or the people who supported what the coordination between Americans and Ukrainians did to him, to his daughter. Um, yeah, that to me fundamentally demonstrates what the real argument is and why he said what he said. Anyways,
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, no wonder you went off the cob. I mean, look what they did to him.
and that's what I mean. It's like,
Yeah.
in fact, he was too lenient and too meek for too long.
Like, which is so funny because Spencer was like his biggest fucking
Yeah.
hype man for a long time. Like, it's just.
Yes, but let's say Spencer went through a reformulation after Charlottesville,
Yeah.
and so that rant he said, my people had your people as slaves.
So I could imagine him doing like the finger guns, like pointing. He's like, with like both index fingers, like people like me look down at people like you. Like he's pointing to the ground. People like you. That gotta admit, that was content though. That was content.
Oh, that was
That
content.
rant.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm saying he had to he I don't know, he wanted the job of a grifter. He just doesn't want to do an honest day's work. And so he
Do
thought,
any of
okay.
us?
Yeah, to be fair,
I wouldn't
yeah.
criticize him for that, but like,
But
no, he's making some moves though. He's in the A-log sphere. He's like trying to make moves,
now
Like,
I understand that. I'm
Yeah.
saying he had to become a CIA cutout in order to do that,
Many such cases.
because the consequences would have been
devastating.
devastating
But-
if he hadn't. And that's all he's doing right now.
No, I think you put that very well, and I think that's a nice.
Trying to based wash the global American, the global empire's goals.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
He was quite innovative in that sense. I'll give him that.
he was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a real
Mhm.
trailblazer, because those people are a dime a dozen nowadays. But at risk of dragging this program out for another
Yes,
hour, I think
yes.
that's a good end point. I'm glad you
Okay.
brought that up to tie it up. But thank you everyone for tuning in to this quite in depth episode of the War Report. We'll be back at it with more normal programming, more normal news updates in the near future, and of course, this is far from the last time you'll hear from Gio on this program.
Oh, yeah.
We always have more to come. So until then, we'll see you guys next time.
God bless. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Too sweet.